And welcome everyone to this afternoon's session on assessment in Canvas. We're talking here, of course, about evaluating your students' mastery of the material that you presented to them, either through Canvas or through Zoom lectures, or however you provided the instructional content that they need. Now we're going to talk about how you evaluate their mastery of that content. And that's something that Canvas is especially well suited for in an online course. Indeed, it's just about the only convenient way for you to assess your students' learning in an online course. You can give live lectures in Zoom and impart content that way, and not even necessarily have to use Canvas, though, of course, it's much more effective in that case if you record your Zoom lectures and put them into Canvas as well. But you do have options as far as delivering instructional content to your students. Delivering assessments, on the other hand, you can't really do through Zoom. So Canvas is the way that you can assess your students' performance in an online course. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How you can do that, what your options for assessments are, and just generally provide you with some options in that regard. Oh, and I see a number of you have already put your names and email addresses in the chat tool on the Zoom meeting. I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't mind doing that. If you haven't already done so, that gives me a roster. And if those are fairly near to the start of the session, it's a lot easier to find them when I'm scrolling through the chat log later on. Thanks for that. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to be talking about today in a little more detail. Let me share my screen and find my outline, which I have here. There we go. We're going to talk first off a little bit about where you find your assessments in Canvas and where you put them, where you create them. And then we're going to talk in turn about the three different types of assessments that you can use in Canvas to evaluate your students' performance. We're going to talk about homework assignments, graded discussions, and quizzes. And those are your three basic assessment types in Canvas. So let me go ahead and let's go ahead and get going with Canvas. Bring that up and we will start working with it. I've got us a little sandbox course to work in here today. So let me bring that up. And this is actually the one that I started yesterday in the content creation seminar that we did yesterday morning, where we talked about how to add instructional content to Canvas through the modules tool. And we created a couple of modules and we uploaded examples of each of the major content types that you can use in Canvas. We created a Canvas page, we uploaded a couple of files, and we created a web link, an external URL. And those are your basic ways to provide basic object types that you can use to provide content to your students, lecture notes, PowerPoint presentations, exam reviews, reading assignments, supplemental reading assignments, and so on. All those can be added as Canvas pages or files uploaded from your computer. And you can also link out to content on the web from the Canvas module. That's where you would probably put your PowerPoint presentations, for instance, as uploaded as a file object from your computer. You can upload them very quickly and even upload multiples at the same time if that's appropriate. What we want to talk about today, though, is the other piece to your online course, which is the assessment piece. But we're also going to be linking those assessments into our modules so that your students don't have to go looking for those assessments throughout the course menu over here somewhere. But I do want to mention a couple of links in the course menu that will be related to what we're talking about. One is the assignments link in the course menu, and the other is the quizzes link. And for this to make much sense, I'm going to need to go to a different course that actually has a few assessments in it already. So let me pull up another course real quickly. The assignments tool in Canvas is quite a lot different from the assignments link that we had in the course menu in Blackboard. It is, in fact, a list of all the assessments. Indeed, it should be called not the assignments tool, but the assessments tool, because all of your assessments, everything that's graded in Canvas, will appear in the under the assignments tool link in the course menu. And you can subdivide these assignments or these assessments into different so-called assignment groups if you wish. You don't have to. By default, a blank Canvas course will come with one assignment group. It's labeled assignments, and everything that's gradable goes in there. But you can create extra groups and subdivide your assessments by type and by value, by weight, and so on. I just mentioned that because we will talk about the assignments tool from time to time today. But automatically, anything that you create in Canvas, any assessment that you create in Canvas that has a grade associated with it, will end up automatically being displayed in the assignments tool. So you can always go here and find all of your assessments quickly. That's great for you, but we don't recommend that you leave this assignments tool visible to students, because otherwise they can come here and find everything that has a grade in it. And I know it seems unlikely that someone would do this, but we have seen it happen where a student just starts working through the assessments and clicking on each one of them and finding the ones that are available and trying to satisfy them, thinking, oh, I already know this material. I don't have to look at your course content. So we recommend forcing them to access your assessments through the modules rather than through the assignments tool. The assignments tool, again, contains all of your homework assignments, all of your quizzes, and all of your graded discussions automatically. There's a subset of that in the quizzes tool, and we'll be dealing with this a good deal today, where only the quizzes are displayed. So this is kind of like 1/3 of the assignments tool. The main thing we'll worry about in the quizzes tool today is the question banks. This is where you find your question banks if you have any of those. So, but you can also go here and find your quizzes immediately. And we also recommend that you not show the students the quizzes tool. That's up to you, but it's generally a good idea, we've found. Not to allow the students to access the quizzes from here, but to force them to access the quizzes in context through the modules. So I'm not going to be using the assignments tool or the quizzes tool very much today. I like to do all of my content and assessment creation and management through the modules tool, which is the heart of the course. And we'll see how that works. I'm going to start with the homework assignments, since that is the best assessment, best type of assessment that you can use in an online course. Graded discussions are wonderful, but they're usually a relatively small, class participation is usually a relatively small part of your grade. Quizzes are, of course, important. Quizzes and Canvas refers to anything, any sort of test from a pop quiz to your final exam as a quiz. So everything's a quiz, every test is a quiz to Canvas. And tests are certainly important, but particularly objective tests are not as secure online as they could be, as we would like them to be. There's no such thing as a completely secure quiz, as we all know. Even if you're standing there in the room with them, some people will find a way to cheat, but it is a bigger problem online. So we don't generally recommend high stakes objective quizzes in online courses. They're not as reliable in an assessment as we would like. So the homework assignment is the item of choice for evaluating your student's performance in an online course. It's a very simple idea. It is a set of instructions that you give your students to complete some sort of task, which could be anything from defining a single word to uploading a file that they've created in some program that you're teaching, like Excel or AutoCAD or something, to a term paper, a research paper, a major writing assignment. A lot of homework assignments tend to be writing assignments of one sort or another, but typically it is something that it is a task, a homework task that the students will fulfill by uploading a file that they have created offline on their local computer or on their smartphone or whatever. And this sort of assessment is much harder to game in an online course than an objective test would be. It's a whole lot more difficult to get somebody to write a term paper for you. Not impossible, but a whole lot more difficult than it is to find someone to give you the answer to a multiple choice question. So we refer to the term that's often used to describe homework assignments in an online course is that it's an authentic assignment. Not only does it better evaluate a student's mastery of the course material, but it's also much more reliable in terms of security. So that's the one that we like to emphasize. So that's why we're going to take that one first. Let's go back to our sandbox course here that we're going to be loading assessments into. We'll go to the modules tool. And I've got a little topic module here for a sample course that I use in a lot of these sessions. It started life as a flex course on screencasting for faculty. Screencasting, just as an aside, since this has a little more context, is what we're doing right now. I'm recording this Zoom session, and since I have my screen shared, I'm recording the computer screen that you're seeing right now, along with my voiceover. That process is called screencasting, and it's one of the best instructional video techniques. One of the easiest ones to use and one of the most effective. And indeed, this whole session, the recording of this whole session here will be largely a screencast that people can view on demand anytime they like, as often as they like. And that's what this course was designed to provide faculty with information on how to do. And the first topic module was, why bother? What about screencasting makes it worth studying? And I already have an external web link in there as content. But now let's think about some assessments. How would I tell if the person who is taking this course actually understood what was presented in this guide to screencasting. And I'll start off with a homework assignment. And making a homework assignment is really simple. You just go, if you're making it from the modules tool, which I prefer, you just go to the top of the module, the title of the module, and move over to the right and look, and let me pull this in a little bit from the right so that if you have some video images over there, I'm not rolling my cursor up underneath them. And please, if at any point I'm talking about something that you can't see, please let me know. It probably means I've forgotten to do something. And I would very much appreciate a heads up on that, because I don't want to be cryptic today. So to add an assessment, specifically a homework assignment to this module, I'll go to the name of the module, move over to the right, and click on the add button, the plus sign, which adds and allows me to add a link and either content or an assessment to this module. So I'll click that plus sign, and I'm given the option to add an item to this particular module. And the types of items that I can add are found in this drop-down menu here. Files, pages, and external URLs are content, information that you need your students to view or read. Assessments include the homework assignment, which is the top one there, quizzes, and discussion forums, which are set to be gradable. Class discussions can either be gradable or not, and you choose that when you make the discussion. And as we learned in an earlier interaction today, you have to make that decision when you first create the discussion if you want it to be gradable. But a homework assignment is always going to be gradable. So if we select the assignment option here, we're given the option to create a new assignment. If we had already created assignments, or perhaps imported some from a development shell or something like that, they'd be listed here. So there's no assignment, no homework assignments in this course right now. So I click on the words new assignment, and I'm asked to give the assignment a name. And I'm going to call this Define Screencasting. I'm going to ask for a definition of the term. When I name this, I can then add the item, and I get a link to an assessment, to a homework assignment, right here in the module. So I've done two things at once. I've created the assignment, and I've put a link to it in my module. If I go over here to the assignments tool, for instance, I could make a homework assignment there. But then I'd have to remember to come back and go to the modules tool and add a link to the assignment into the modules tool in a separate step, which is less efficient. And at my age, it's dangerous because I might forget to do that. So I like to get things done all at one time while I'm thinking about it. So I've done that, but I of course, haven't really created a homework assignment yet. I've just created a blank assignment, the shell of an assignment. To flesh that out, I click on the name of the assignment I've just made, and I edit it using the edit button up here in the upper right-hand corner. That's hard to miss. The Canvas user interface is highly intuitive until it's not, until you get to some. There are a few things where they miss that goal, but by and large, it's quite intuitive. All right. The first thing I'm asked to do when I create a homework assignment is provide the instructions that will tell the students what to do. And generally, we're thinking about the student creating a file that contains the answer to this assignment, or that fulfills this assignment, and then uploading that file to a Dropbox associated with the assignment that's automatically created when you create the assignment. You do have the option of providing the student with a text box, just like this one, where they can type the answers out in real time while they're on Canvas and not have to have the extra step of creating it on their computer or their smartphone and then uploading it. That's okay for very short assignments, things where the student might type a couple of sentences or a paragraph and not have to think for extended periods of time about it. It's safer, though, if this is going to be a bit longer process, if the student's going to have to type more than that or create other sorts of things other than just typing some text. It's better if they actually create the file offline and then upload it to the assignment. And we'll see how to choose between those options here in a second. But here I have to provide the instructions to the students. So I might say something like, define the term screencasting. Also, list 3 applications of screencasting, instructional applications. And provide the names of 2 software tools that can be used to create screencasts. Remember, I don't have to tell you that students will misunderstand any instruction that you provide to them if they possibly can. And there's no way to completely avoid that. But you want to make, subtlety will get you nowhere in typing assignment instructions, and I'm not telling you anything. Make the instructions as unambiguous as possible. I might also tell it's often a good idea to tell the students how you expect them to fulfill this assignment. Upload your answer to the assignment Dropbox in the form of a Microsoft Word file. So they can't email it to you. not in meet the instructions. And some will try that because they know how to do that already. All right, so that'll do for our instructions for this assignment. Now first thing I have to do, assignments are by definition gradable. So homework assignments are. So I have to assign this a number of points. I'll just give it 10. If I have created so-called assignment groups, I can assign this to an appropriate group. By default, all of your assignments will go into an assignment group labeled assignments. And I'm not going to get into why you might create extra assignment groups other than just keeping things organized for yourself. It has some implications for a grade computation, but that session's in a couple of weeks, so we'll deal with that then. You can specify how you want your assignment grades displayed in the gradebook. The usual option is points, but you can do it as percentage of total points possible. you can display a grade as a checkoff, complete, incomplete, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, did it, didn't do it type thing. Or you can display as a letter grade if you set up a letter grade scheme, grading scheme in your course, or in the 4-point GPA scale. The next thing you have to do is select so-called submission type. How are the students going to turn this in? And right now, we really only have one option, which is online, because all courses, except for certain very limited categories. I saw another bit of information come out from the Chancellor's office just today or yesterday, saying that they're still holding to the plan that, of course, all summer classes are already running are online, and in the fall everything's going to be online except for certain laboratory and practical courses that can't be done that way. So online is a pretty good bet. You can, if you're using Canvas as a supplement to your to an in-class course, in that wonderful future when we'll actually dare to get back into a classroom with our students, you can set up this assignment to be turned in on paper. So Canvas is not going to be expecting the student to upload a file. They'll hand it in to you, but you can still enter a grade for it in the Gradebook. Or the assignment might be coming in from an external tool like My Whatever Lab or some publisher's resource. But the vast majority of the time, the submission is going to be online. So we'll select that by clicking on it. And we have some options as to how the students can turn in their assignment online. One I've already described to you. They could just type it into a text box that you provide to them. That's one option. The website URL and the media recordings are just variations on this text entry thing, and that's not, they're not, I don't know why they make such a big deal of these. They're really meaningless. But by far the most common option is to have the student create a file on their local computer or on their smartphone or their tablet, and then upload that to the assignment, to Canvas. And that's what we'll select. You can give them the option to do both either file upload or text entry, but that usually just generates confusion. So the student's going to have to create a file. It would be nice, of course, if when the student submits that file, you can open it. And in this case, I have specified a Microsoft Word file. And that's not an especially onerous specification because most students will either have Microsoft Word, students can purchase it very reasonably, or they'll have some sort of text editor that can save files in Microsoft Word format. They can get a free open office suite that will create Word files. They can get a, if they have WordPad on a Windows machine, it will save files in Word format. If they have Pages on a Mac, Pages will save files in Word format because you want to be able to open the file. And if you're using a PC, you probably can't open native Pages files. So you can restrict the file types that they can upload to prevent them from uploading something that you can't use. And you have to do that, you have to enter the file extensions. Like for a Word file, the file extension is either .doc for the older forms, or, and if I want to specify more than one, I have to put commas in between them. The more modern Word file format extension is .docx, but all Word files would have one of those two extensions. And if you specify this, Canvas will not let them upload anything that doesn't fit this criterion. If you wish, you can have if it's a significant writing assignment especially, you can have it checked for plagiarism by Unicheck, our plagiarism checker. Let's just go ahead and do that to show you what that looks like. You have some options you can set here. This adds the submission to the institutional library. This means that if one student submits a paper and then another one submits it later, it will be caught because it will be part of our institutional database that no one can get to other than faculty. So it's not a privacy thing, but it eliminates people sharing papers across class sections and so on. If you set this option, Unicheck will disregard anything that's between quotation marks. Students can figure that out, and sometimes they'll put things between quotation marks they shouldn't. So it's a question as to whether you want that one turned on or not. It's turned on by default. And it will also automatically detect bibliographic references and not scan those because they typically are going to be copied from something. And you can automatically exclude sources from your originality report that are less than a certain number of words. Like certain phrases are going to be flagged all the time because they're very common, and you may not want to deal with those. And the default is to not show anything that's less than 8 words that matches other documents, or the percentage, the total percentage of material that is flagged in the document. If you can exclude sources if less than, say, 10% of it appears to be or matches something online. Anyway, those are some settings you have. Show reports to students can be immediately, after the assignment's graded, after the due date, or never. It's useful to show these originality reports to students as quickly as possible, usually, because the student can always resubmit an assignment, a homework assignment. You can't stop them from submitting a homework assignment multiple times before the end of the availability date for the assignment. So sometimes students will see that originality report and realize, oops, busted, and then resubmit something of their own work. And that eliminates a lot of moral dilemma for you and so on. Assignments can be set up as a group assignment where a group of students works together on the assignment and then everybody gets the same grade. Students hate those. They are, of course, instructionally wonderful because that's how they're going to work when they get out in the world. But it's not a popular option, but it is an option. And you can set up peer reviews if you wish, so that students help you or provide feedback on each other's work. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. You can manually assign peer reviews or have them assigned automatically. And you can set them up so that they're anonymous, so that people don't have to worry about their peers getting ticked off at them because they evaluated their work honestly. Or you can require people to stand by what they say, which is also instructional. Then you get to this assign to block here, which is pretty straightforward. Normally, you'll assign an assignment to everyone. The only reason, usually the only reason you wouldn't assign it to everyone is if some people needed to have different dates of access. Like somebody was out of the country or in the hospital or something and needed a little extra time to finish the assignment, you could assign them different due dates and availability dates. Otherwise, you're just going to assign it to everyone in the vast majority of cases. And in this block, you set your time limits for the students. In an online course, students can do the work up to a limit when they want to on their own schedule. But this is where you set the limits. You can first tell them when you expect the assignment to be completed, by when you expect it to be completed. Both dates and times can be set in there. The due date is not enforced per se. Students can submit after the due date, though the assignment will be marked late in the gradebook. Unless you also set availability dates. By default, a homework assignment becomes available to students as soon as it's published. And the student can submit it anytime up to the end of the course. You can limit that by setting available from and available until dates. If you don't want them to start working on a homework assignment until they've gotten through a certain amount of the course, you can set an available from date before which they can't open up the assignment and submit it. More commonly, you can set an available until date, which sets a hard limit on when they, on the time that they have to complete the assignment, unlike the due date. Very often, the available until date is set to the same date and time as the due date, but not always. Just depends on what you're trying to do. So this assignment will become available as soon as I publish it, as soon as I make it available to students. And the students will have until June 24th at the end of the day to turn it in.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Before you move on, in my situation, I have a group A, group B, and I would do things differently for each group. So when you have assigned to, how would I do that to two different groups?
You would set that up here as a group assignment.
Okay.
Well, if in fact, let me back up on that a second. If in fact it is a group assignment, so that the students work together on it and get a single grade for all the students, you would assign it as a group assignment. If not, if you just wanted to assign this individually to a subset of your student population, you would add, well, you would start off here in this assign to block, and you click here and you would search. I can't show you that here because there's no students in this course, Shell. But if I click here, I will normally see a list of at least some of the students' names who are enrolled in the course, and I can search for others by just typing the first few letters of their name. And I can go through and pick out the students I wish to assign this particular homework assignment to, and only they will be able to see it. Then you can make another assignment for your B group and assign that one to the appropriate students.
Is there a way I can somewhere in the course create a list for group A and B so I don't have to type it every time?
Sure, you could well, you could keep a record of who is in each group, but you'd still, at this point, here, you'd still have to probably have to type the first few letters of their names each time.
Thank you.
Because I can't assign this, well, can I assign this to student groups? That's a good question. Just a second, I'll save this one, and then we'll go look in another course, and I'll answer that question. All righty, any other questions about creating an assignment before I save this one and get it ready? Yes, April.
Yeah, I do things a little bit differently. I create what I call a homework packet for each chapter in my discipline, which is Spanish.
Right.
That includes, like my first one for one of my courses is 60 pages long. It includes every assignment due that chapter, a due date, the time. It includes the directions for each assignment. And what you say about directions is so true. It has to be clear. A model for every exercise. They're of a creative nature, because I agree with you that the assignments should be more important than the tests because of the academic integrity issue.
Right.
But is there a way to upload that? Because they have everything they need to know, every assignment for each chapter. Is there a way to upload that so that way when they click on assignments, they're going to see that whole packet rather than my itemizing them?
I'm afraid you're going to have to itemize. Each separate assignment has to be a separate assignment object.
So I've been wasting my time with all these homework.
Well, no, I wouldn't say at all that you were wasting your time, because you could provide that to your students for informational purposes. So
well, here's another.
When they went to the individual assignments, they'd know a lot more about what they were doing. So I think that's a wonderful thing to have. But you can't just magically have Canvas parse that for you and into separate assignments and give each assignment a gradebook column and so on.
Can I ask another question? The reason I asked is, in our department, we're talking about pure online courses and those that are going to be mostly Zoom with some online elements. You had said that the college was not going to allow anyone to email us anything. How would the college know? In other words, if I said...
Oh, no, that's not. I mean, certainly students can email you things and so on. We recommend against allowing them to email you submissions to assignments, because they can get lost in amongst all the spam in your email accounts and so on. If the student uploads their file that they've created to the assignment, you always know where it is and it can't get lost. And you have the capability to use the powerful online grading tools that Canvas provides, which you wouldn't have if they just emailed a file.
Well, I certainly see all the advantages with the due date, the time, but I'm just asking, would we get into trouble with the district if
Oh, of course not. You can have students email. Students will email you things whether you allow them to or not.
They loved it, though. They loved the disclosure.
Not intended to be any sort of prohibition. It's just that for an assignment, it's much better if they upload it to the Dropbox, where you will be able to handle it better.
If we were going to
they can email you stuff, and there's no hard and fast rule about how much synchronous interaction through Zoom you should have in an online course. Indeed, I think ideally you do a lot of both, the Zoom and have a lot of information in Canvas as well, because that's two different ways that students can access the content. And we all know that some students consume content better through text, through reading it, and others are better if they hear it. And certainly it's a lot better if they can ask you questions when you're presenting information in a live Zoom meeting. So doing it both ways is ideal.
Can you upload I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
No, I was just going to ask, is there a way to upload it as like syllabus 2, and then you tell your students syllabus 2 is really your homework? Is there a way to do that? Because I like having it available to them on Canvas in case they lose it. Is there any way?
Oh, sure. Oh, of course. Of course, you can put it in, you can upload it as a file to a module and have it available there, as well as in a live Zoom meeting. And that's ideal.
So in other words, it's not a bad thing to have my homework packets. They can be uploaded as a file. It's just
Oh,
that
absolutely.
okay. Okay.
Absolutely. The more varied the ways that you present the content, the more students who are going to be successful.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Dave. Well, actually, it's kind
Yes.
of two. All right, in the creation, I noticed that there's if you make something an assignment and you have a due date, it shows up in the to-do list, it shows up in a student's calendar, and I've
That
had,
is correct.
even though I keep saying, look at the modules, look at the modules, I send mass emails, but apparently in other classes, they like to see the calendar, they see a due date. So if I have something where I want them to be able to read it and know it's coming up, do I make that a text? Like there's a text, I think there's something that you have when you're creating it, something that's like just like a text heading. Do I make it a
So
text?
if you just want them to read something, say in the
Right.
textbook or online or something like that, yet you want them to have a date by which they should have that done.
Or like they don't really need to have that done by us. Like some things you don't really need to have it due by something. But students say, oh, I didn't know I had to do it. It's like it was in the modules, but it doesn't show up in their text because I think I made it a text creation.
If you're going to have it show up in the calendar, though, it's going to have a date associated with it. So you can just pick a date, or indeed,
Well, no, I didn't create it.
You could make an assignment. You could make an assignment that had no submission.
Yeah, and that's what I've done. But I'm saying they seem to like things that show up in a calendar. I didn't create.
If you make an assignment that has no submission, though, you can set a due date. And that will show up in the calendar. Or you can just manually create an event in the calendar as well. That will put that in front of them in the calendar. But whether that's worth your time or not, I don't know. That would be a personal decision.
I mean, I don't think it's I did not create things to show up in the calendar, but they only looked at the things that showed up in the calendars, which I believe are things with due dates, correct? And things that are considered.
That's correct. Creating the due date is worthwhile, even if you don't necessarily intend to enforce it, because it puts it in the calendar. So that's one more place, and in the to-do list that the students automatically see on the side of their opening page. So that does make it less likely they're going to miss it.
Okay, but if I make a module where I say just look at the modules and it's listed that it's coming, like read this assignment, but it doesn't have to have a due date, or practice this activity, because I have to think about activities I normally do in the classroom, and they can do it at any time. It doesn't have a due date, but they still should do it before the quiz.
By a certain time, right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And and adding a due date to something, either manually creating a calendar event or creating a no submission assignment and having assigning a due date to it, will cause it to appear in the calendar. One thing you would want to do if you were doing that, and this were not something you were going to assign a grade for, you would click this box that says don't count this assignment toward the final grade, so that it doesn't mess up your grade computation.
Yeah, because my problem
you'd probably just assign 0 points to it.
Yeah, but the thing is, it still shows up in the grade book.
Not if you click that box that says do not count this assignment toward the final grade. I don't think it will show up in the grade book.
Like if I have, because I see these extra columns that are showing up from somewhere, and because I've made different.
That's probably something else.
Oh, okay. My second question is, I do have an activity where I try to encourage students to do assignments early, like to do their speeches early, because it makes it easier to grade, and I give them extra credit and everything. Now in Blackboard, it's very easy to have students sign up, and you can see the list and everything. The only way I could create a self sign up sheet for students was to make it in the discussion.
Yeah, that comes to mind right offhand. Yeah.
But is there another way because that was the only way I could figure out.
Nothing else comes to mind right off the bat. I'll think about that, but nothing else appears. I know the feature you're referring to in Blackboard.
In Blackboard, yeah, that was real easy.
Doesn't
Yeah.
exist in Canvas. So.
Okay, so it's not my imagination. It does not exist in Canvas.
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
All righty. So we have an assignment created and dates assigned, and to put it in to save it, we just save it, or we can save it and publish it right now if we're ready for the students to use it right away. So I'll just save and publish that. I see that it's published. If I go back to my modules, that assignment is now there. I created a link to the assignment at the same time I created the assignment. So it's ready to go. It's published. The students can see it. And I can move on and create another one. So that's all there is to creating a homework assignment. Let's see, how are we doing?
Sorry, Dave, I missed
Yes,
one
go right
little
ahead.
step.
Yes.
I can't. Okay, where was I? When you, how did you get to edit before you started doing the instructions?
I clicked on the name of the assignment that I'd created, the blank or shell assignment I'd created in the module. And then the edit button is up here in the upper right.
Thank you.
You bet. All righty, so we've created a homework assignment. Now that's one type of assessment, probably the most important type. And you're limited there only by your imagination. You can have students submit files of any kind, and you can have them do just about anything and then submit it to you by uploading it to the Dropbox. Let's see what that looks like. You can always simulate what things look like to students by going to your home link in your course menu and selecting Student View from the task menu over here on the right. This displays your course to you as your students see it. You see exactly what they would see if they enter your course. For instance, here's the to-do list. And that assignment I just posted showed up here because I published it along with the due date and its value. But in order to take this assignment, of course, oops, I've been incautious here. Normally I would hide this assignments tool from the students. So they're going to have to go to their modules, which they can do either from the course menu or from that link on the home page that we created here. And then they would see the assignment. They would see that it's due on June 24, that it's worth 10 points. And that's the other place they see that. But yes, Kathy, sometimes the students just don't go to the modules tool.
Right.
Oh, how they're finding your content, I don't know. But yeah, so the student can submit that assignment just by clicking on the name to it. And of course, they don't get an option to edit it. Thank goodness. They get the information about the assignment and they see the instructions. They don't have to go right ahead and submit the assignment. They can, at this point, they would look at the instructions, then they go and open up Word or some text editor and start typing the definition when they were ready. Once they've got that done, they would come back here and click Submit Assignment. This is sometimes a little confusing to students because they say, well, wait, I'm ready to submit it, you know, or I haven't uploaded the file yet. Why would I be clicking a button that says Submit Assignment? This might be better labeled begin assignment or something like that, but that's what it means. It means when they click that button that says submit assignment, they get the Dropbox that they upload the file to. And this is functionally fairly similar to attaching a file to an email. So if a student can do that, they can submit a file through the Dropbox. There's no big mystery to it. They're presented actually with 2 tabs by default, the way we have the system set up. They can go to their Google Drive, which I can't show you because I'm masquerading as a test student. But they could bring up their Google Docs and submit the assignment straight from Google Drive. But more likely, they are going to upload the file from their local computer where they've created it. Of course, they may be using Google Docs to create the file in the first place. So that's sometimes tempting for them. But normally, they're going to upload the file by choosing the file, by clicking this button right here, and then navigating on their computer through their file manager to where they have that file stored. Let's see, I've got a sample file for this somewhere. There we go, screencasting definition. It's a Word document, so it meets that requirement. If I select that file, click open, the file is ready to be uploaded. Students can upload more than one file if it's so indicated. If you tell them to create 2 or 3 different files for an assignment, they can upload all of them, one after the other. They can type comments like, boy, this nearly killed me, or something like that. And since it's being plagiarism checked, they get this box that they have to check that says it's my own work. So you have them. If you can prove that it's not, you've immediately got them on an honors violation. And then submit the assignment. And this actually submits the file to the assignment.
Dave, I
Yes.
wasn't aware that it actually does say Google Drive there for students, because sometimes it's...
Yes, it does. And it gives, and I don't know of a way to prevent that option from showing up. Because they might have a Word doc stored on Google Drive. They can certainly do that. Yes, Victoria. Oh, looks like you had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Zoom's a wonderful
Sometimes I
thing.
can't open the link.
Pardon?
Sometimes I can't open the link, or just it's
Yeah, if they don't have their Google Docs set up properly, if they haven't shared it with you, you won't be able to open it. So that's less than desirable. In that case, all you can do is email or message them and say, don't do that.
But if
I told you to upload this as a Word doc. Save it as a Word document on your local computer and upload it according to the directions if you expect to get credit.
All right, so put that in the directions. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think,
well, but you may have to reiterate that. I mean, they're not necessarily going to follow the directions the first time, for sure.
when you send a message through the Gradebook, like when you open in the Gradebook, the grade link,
Yes.
and they don't look, because I didn't realize it didn't go automatically to their email. So
when you message a student in Canvas, if the students have not changed their default notification settings, they will get an email in their personal email account that indicates that you have sent them a message in Canvas. And the text part of the message will actually be forwarded to them. But they can shut that off in their notification settings, and you can't do anything about it.
Okay.
And that's true whether you message them from the Gradebook or from the inbox tool.
When you get a chance, will you please show how to hide the assignments or this On the home page here.
Yeah, if we go back to the home page,
Okay.
and let me
Yeah.
leave student view here.
Okay.
How to hide this link in the course menu?
Yes.
To do that, you go to hide it from the students.
Yes.
You can go to your settings link in the course menu
Okay.
and go to the navigation tab on the
Okay.
settings pages. And here's your course menu as it exists by default in the blank course. If there's something here you don't want the students to see, like the assignments tool, you just drag it down, click and drag it down below this line. And we do the same thing with the quizzes tool.
Okay.
Now, and then save the change. This is one of those places you have to save the change.
Okay.
And now both assignments and quizzes are showing as invisible to students. That's what this little slashed I means.
Okay. Thank you. I was having problem
You
with
bet.
that last semester.
Ah, all right. Well, that's all you have to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, now let's talk about gradable discussions.
Dave, I'm sorry, I have a quick question about,
Surely.
is there some kind of, like it's you know, there's submissions, does it have to be a docs, does it have to be a Word document, or what? I guess.
No, it can be anything you wish, but if you want it to be a particular file type, you can tell Canvas to enforce that.
Why would I want it to be a particular file type?
They might submit something you can't open. I've known students to submit WordPerfect documents.
So,
or a lot of times students working on a Mac will submit Pages files, which is a little word processor in Mac that Apple produces. And typically, many people cannot open those on a PC.
I can't, yeah.
unless they have their Microsoft Word configured to do so.
Oh.
They can't open that, and then the student, there has to be a back and forth. Well, it has to be something I can open, or I can't give you credit for it, and so on. It just saves all that hassle if you set a document format requirement.
Okay.
It also comes from their phone too, doesn't it?
Well, the same would be true with the phone. Yeah. They might use Pages on the phone instead of Word on the phone, even though both are free. Okay. So you want them to provide you with something that you can open up and look at. And
real quick
Canvas handles Word documents very well, and Pages documents not so well as well also. Yes.
Dave, is this going to be available for us later?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I just need
absolutely.
to make sure
all of our recordings are stored on our open on demand tutorial site at sdccdolvid.org. I'll put that in the chat tool.
Perfect. Thank you.
And they'll be under Workshop Archives in the menu at the top of the screen.
Oh, great.
Let's see what I'm up to right now. I was loading some today. I've got up to the June the 4th, the open lab that we did. Recording is in there. And I've got 2 more that are ready to load, and I haven't put them in yet. But this one will be up in the next day or 2 as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, April.
Yeah, the submission of the document was a big thing for me last semester. It was a learning experience not to accept. Could you give a very brief description of what, I love the term Microsoft Word document, what that includes, what types? Because I found there were some things I couldn't open, some things I could if I stood on my head. What does that include, basically?
Well, a Microsoft Word document is a document created by the Microsoft Word application in Microsoft Office. But Microsoft Word is not the only application that can create documents in that format. Pages can do that. OpenOffice can do that. A number of I don't know about WordPerfect. I think it can as well. Yeah, yes, the last version of WordPerfect will as well. So students can save their work as a Word document, file type, from a variety of different word processors and text editors. And as long as they do that, you will be able to open it in Microsoft Word if that's what you're using. Also, even more importantly, when they submit that to Canvas, if they submit as a Word document, Canvas can display that document in the grading interface very efficiently, and it can provide you with grading tools that you would not otherwise be able to use. That's something we cover in our grading seminar, but basically there are markup tools like Blue Pencil that you can use to mark up their paper and talk about, or mark up their writing and make comments about specific parts of the submission that otherwise it would be difficult to do. So it's very useful to have them submit in the form of a Word doc, because Canvas gives you more grading options if they do.
Eve, isn't there also a place where it says documents you can accept some? I know it's in there somewhere where like you can write .doc, docx.
Yeah,
PDF.
that's in the edit screen for the assignment.
Okay.
For the creation screen, right here. If you restrict upload file types,
That's it.
that's where you put that right there. Mm-hmm.
And that's easy for students to see, and then there's no argument because they say, "Oh,
Well, no, they actually don't see this. You
Oh.
have to put that direction into your instructions.
Oh, okay.
Now, if they try to submit the wrong kind of file, Canvas won't let them, but that's a bad time for them to find out about that.
Okay, so put it in the instructions. It's not there automatically for them to see.
No, it's not there automatically. Well, actually, I'll take that back. It is there, but it's not real emphasized. It is, in fact, it does show to them that there are certain file types that are acceptable, but it's not as clear as what you would put in the instruction.
Okay.
I urge you to, if you're going to limit file types, put that in your instructions so they know that up front. They don't waste a lot of time doing it in the wrong application.
So Dave, if they have a Mac, if I have a Mac, which I do,
Yep.
then should I limit it to, should I limit it to Word? Because then don't they, if they work on it in Pages, then they have to get another program. They would have
No,
to.
if they work on it, they can save the file in Word format from Pages.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They just do save as?
Save as and pick the right file type.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
And it doesn't cost them extra money or anything. I would feel bad.
No,
Cost them money.
no.
Okay.
All
So
right.
say it's a Word document.
Okay. Yeah, save it as a Word document. All right, let's talk about graded discussions. Let me get out of the here. You would create discussions either from the discussions tool in the course menu or from the module. Again, if I wanted to have a class discussion I wanted to assign class participation grades to, I can click that plus sign at the top of the module again and select from my list of possible items to add to the module a discussion. And a new topic in this case, because I don't have any already. And I might call this, what can I do with screencasting? ? And add the item. This is like the assignment. This is an empty discussion. There's nothing there. So I just click on the name of it, that's just been popped up and edit it, just as I did with the homework assignment. Like the homework assignment, I have a text box where I can enter instructions, or a prompt, as it's called here, telling the students what to discuss. How about list 3 things you might be able to do or 3 instructional, I'm changing my mind as I go along. List 3 instructional applications of screencasting in your subject area. Reply to at least 2 of your peers' posts with comments, questions. That's a common thing to do in a discussion where your discussion topic or forum where you're evaluating student participation. You don't want them just to reply to your prompt, but you want them to read what their peers write and reply to at least 2 of them, so that you get an active discussion going. So it's not just you putting out instructions and the students replying to you, but they're also communicating with one another. That's a common technique in an online course with a class discussion that's going to be graded.
And you might want to add, and no more than 2 students can reply to the same 2 people, because otherwise one student gets, the first 2 get everyone, and then some people are there were like, no one responded to me, and they're feeling.
That's an option as well. Though getting cooperation, the more complex you make it, the less cooperation you're going to get in most cases. You can choose, you can attach a file to this if you want them to look at a Word document, say, or something like that, before replying to you. That doesn't happen that often, but you have that option. And then you do have a series of options about the discussion that you can choose. Allow threaded replies, you almost always want. That groups the replies in such a way that you can tell who's talking, who's replying to whom. So that one you'll usually want to check. This is kind of related as well to what Kathy was saying. It's also, you can also fix it so that students can't post their first reply to you, or rather they can't read other students' posts before they post their first reply to you. This prevents them from going through and finding one they like that another student has made and just changing a couple of words in it and posting it themselves. That's a common, it's not always appropriate, but it's often useful. If you're grading student participation, you're likely to get more original posts that way. I'm not even going to address podcast feeds here. If you want to assign a grade to the student, you have to click this box that says graded. Otherwise, there'll be no column in the grade book for it. It won't contribute to the course grade. If you forget to do that up front and students start posting to it, you can't go back and turn this into a graded discussion after students have started participating. So you want to get that in first. Once you select graded, you get some other options down here. you have to assign some points. You had similar options to what you had with the homework assignment. You can display the grade in a variety of ways, points being the default. You can do peer reviews. You can assign it to everyone or to some subset of your course, normally to everyone. And you can set due dates by which time everything must be done. And you can set availability dates, just as we did with the homework assignment. And usually the due date and the available until date will be the same, but not always. So this is a little bit simpler than the homework assignment. And then I can just save and publish this. To see what this looks like, let me go to a course where I've got some posts. I've got this very same discussion, but I've got some posts in the discussion topic so you can see what it looks like and how it works. Go to that other course we were looking at earlier. Oh, that's not the right one. It moves around on me when I compress the screen a little bit. There we go. Here's that same discussion post in a similar module in another course. What could I do with screencasting? It's got the same, basically the same post, 3 ideas for instructional applications in your field. Here I sort of made the replies and comments optional. That's options. Students don't do options, you know that. So that's probably not a good idea. Okay, so one student, my test 2 student, has come along and has replied to me, to this prompt. And they've listed 3 possible instructional applications. Great, that's what I asked for. Then another test student came along, read that post. Everybody can see this post, as discussions are by their very nature public. When the student posts something on the discussion topic, it's like posting it on a bulletin board in the hall. Everybody who walks by can see it. Then another student came along and had a question. How long can your PowerPoint lectures be if you create a screencast for them? And this student who made this original post read this reply and noticed that every post comes with a reply button. So people can reply to the original post, they can reply to replies to the original post. You can generate, as we are generating here, a thread of replies. The student who made the first post then answered the second student's question, however long you can get your students to watch it. And these are, you can see that these are indented underneath one another, and they're grouped together with white space around them. That tells you this is a discussion thread. All of these posts relate back to this original post here. So this is an ongoing thread of discussion in your discussion topic. So people can come in at a time after all this has occurred and follow this discussion. So these discussion forums are very powerful tools. They allow you to have very robust class discussions asynchronously. Everybody doesn't have to be online at the same time. And then, of course, you can have more threads, multiple threads. You may have hundreds of posts in a very active discussion forum. And these can be graded. And we'll take a look at how that grading is done in the grading seminar later on. Or I'll answer questions about that if we have time later. But right now, we're at almost the 3 hour and a half mark, and we now need to move on to talk about quizzes, because that's certainly an important assessment type, even given the concern about objective tests online is still you're going to use them. Making them real high stakes is maybe not a great idea. But on the other hand, you can make them much more secure by using subjective questions like essay questions. So we need to know how to create quizzes and how to deal with them. And that's not difficult at all in Canvas. Canvas has a very powerful but very easy to use testing engine. You can create just about any kind of quiz that you could give on paper in your classroom. And at least in the case of the objective questions, you don't have to grade it. Canvas does that work for you. You just tell Canvas what the right answer is for each question, and it does the grading and assigns the points. It can't grade essay questions yet. Thank goodness. When it gets to that point, they probably won't need us anymore. Yes, Victoria.
Could you show us how the gradebook look like for the discussion? So based on your discussion demo right here, what does the grade portion look like?
I tell you what, I'll be happy to do that at the end. Right now, I want to make sure that we give quizzes a worthwhile whack here. But I'll answer any questions you have after we get done with that.
Thank you.
You bet. How do we make a quiz? Well, we make a quiz almost the same way we've made homework assignments and graded discussions. You can go to the quizzes tool and make them there by adding a quiz up here in the upper right, but then you're going to have to link that quiz into the module in a separate operation. Why not just go to the module and add a quiz there? And we'll add it, oops, and I need to be back in my sandbox here to get back in the right course. And go to my modules. And go to, again, I'll put it in this same module we've been working in here. I add an item, just as I have before, with that plus sign at the top of the module. And this time I'll select quiz as the assessment type to add. And this will be a new quiz, so I click on new quiz. And I give it a name. We'll just call this the Why Screencasting Quiz. Add the item. Like what's gone before, this is just a blank quiz at this point. There's nothing in it, so we have to edit it to get it into a form that we can use. So we'll click on the name of the quiz, and we'll click Edit. So it's a fairly consistent user interface, at least as far as creation of assessments goes, for each of the major assessment types, which makes it easier to remember. In the editing screens for a quiz, though, it's a little more complex because we have two tabs. We have the Details tab and the Questions tab up here at the top. The Details tab allows us to put in instructions and options on how the quiz will behave and what options students have to take it. The Questions tab obviously allows us to actually put the questions in. So we'll start with the Details tab. You'll have some quiz instructions, probably the stuff you would type at the top of the test paper that you're going to print off, like answer all questions. No penalty for guessing. Some hard-hearted instructors actually add an extra deduction for guessing and getting it wrong. Better off not answering it, in that case. In Blackboard, there were automated tools to do that. They don't exist in Canvas. That's another reason students like Canvas. Obviously, you can put whatever here you would normally put at the top of your quiz paper. You have to select the quiz type, and the default is a graded quiz. 99% of the time, that's what you'll be creating. But you have the option to create a practice quiz, and that's not a bad option. to give the students a practice quiz to run through before you actually evaluate them. When I first started teaching in the classroom, way back in the 20th century, I worked at a residential women's college with sororities. And when I would, I would give students test papers back to them so they could study by them. And I know that every one of those papers, or a copy of every one of those tests, went into a file at each sorority. So the sorority students could pick them out and say, oh, this is what he gave in 2 years ago on the same stuff, And I didn't feel that was fair, that they should have that advantage and the rest of the class should not. So I would typically run off last semester's test over that part of the course and give it out to everyone. Now that involved a lot of duplication and a lot of collating. Remember that? Boy, did I hate collating paper tests. Here you have the option to do something like that very easily without having to run it off and collate it. So you can give students a practice test to take. If you don't do anything else, it's a good idea to give them at least one practice course or practice test in the in your getting started module or your introductory module, so that they know what taking a test on Canvas is like before they have to do it for real with a graded risk. So they're not intimidated by the interface. But usually it'll be a graded quiz. You can also do course surveys. I've never quite figured out why you do a graded survey. I'd love to hear an example of that. But normally surveys would be ungraded. They're just for collecting information and opinion and whatnot. But 99% of the time, this will be a graded quiz. That's why that's the default. The assignment group, we'll talk about that when we talk about grading in another session. Shuffle answers refers to multiple choice and multiple answer questions, where you have the possible answers to a question in a certain order. You can have those shuffled for different students so that each student gets the answers in a different order. Which is
awesome.
It adds some security, but you have to be very careful to avoid possible answers like all of the above, or B and C, but not D, if you're going to do that. Never use this if you're using test banks, question banks, because you don't know. Usually, if you've got a question bank with hundreds of questions in it, chances are some of them are not suitable for shuffling answers, unless you vet them very carefully. But that is an option that you have.
And put it in the instructions too.
Yeah, and put it in the instructions, right. You can set a time limit on the test in minutes, and that will be enforced. There'll be a timer that counts down on the right-hand side, the upper right corner of the test, and the students will get a warning when they get so close to the end, so they know that they're about. And when the timer runs out, the test is submitted and the student is kicked out. Under certain circumstances, you may allow the students to take the test more than once, in which case you can allow multiple attempts. If you do that, you have to decide which attempt will be graded, or which attempt's grade will be averaged into the overall grade, and the options are highest, the last one they did, or the average of all the attempts. If you do not set a particular number of allowed attempts, the students have unlimited attempts. One circumstance where you might do something like this is if you have maybe a syllabus quiz in your first module, and you want to make sure the students have read the syllabus. You can create a bank of questions for that syllabus quiz so that the questions are pulled randomly from that question bank, and you can let the students take the syllabus quiz over and over again and not let them progress forward until they make a perfect score. It's an old trick for ensuring that the students read the syllabus. Eventually, they'll read it when they get tired of guessing and missing a question here and there. But normally, you would set the number of allowed attempts to 2 or 3 or whatever if you were having multiple attempts.
Steve?
So 4. Yes.
All right, you said that you could structure that so that they can't go further, but where is
Yes.
that listed?
That would be a prerequisite in the modules.
Oh,
I'm sorry, a requirement. You set that up so that they can't get to the next module. It can only be done by modules.
okay.
So you can say, you know, the syllabus quiz would typically be the last thing in your first module. And you can set it so that they have to make a minimum score of like a perfect score on that quiz before they can proceed. It's an old dodge, and it does work. Though sometimes it will hang some students up who just have problems with the quiz interface, but that's something you want to find out then rather than when it's a high stakes quiz later on. So it's a legitimate technique. This block here determines when students can see feedback on their test. If you check this box that says, let students see their quiz responses, including incorrect responses, so they'll know which ones they got wrong. They won't necessarily know what the right answer is, but they will know which ones they got wrong, which ones they got right. If you check this box, the students by default will see, by default, these will be unchecked, will immediately, upon submitting the test, not while they're taking it, but immediately upon submitting that attempt, they will see the test in its entirety, and they'll see which questions they got wrong and which ones they got right by implication. You may or may not want them to see that right away, in which case you can have them see it only after their last attempt if you've given them multiple attempts, which would make sense. There's no point in letting them see what they got right and wrong and then having them take it again in most cases. Or if you've not given multiple attempts, it may make sense to let them see the test paper only once, or their test result more than once. In effect, see the entire test again. But that eliminates their ability to study from that quiz. And of course, quizzes ideally are learning experiences as well as evaluations. So I've never been a big fan of that option, but it's there if you need it. If you really want to give them feedback, you can let them see the correct answers to the ones they missed. But you can govern when that happens. Normally, you would not let them see that until their last attempt was done. And indeed, you might not want to let them see it until well after the test was completed, when everybody had taken the test. So you might set a date of the due date for the test so that they can't see the correct answers until everybody's taken it and it's done. Then they'll be able to see those correct answers when they're studying, but they won't be able to see them in time to share them with their peers or anything like that who have not yet taken the test. And then you can even turn that off at a later date if you like. So you have a good deal of flexibility in when and if students see the test paper, or the list of questions. And of course, you can uncheck that and turn all of that off. So that's up to you. You can also have the test presented to the students one question at a time. This minimizes the possibility of the student copying and pasting the questions and saving them and sharing them with their peers. You can't totally stop them from doing that, but you can make it inconvenient. It also allows them to focus on the question, a single question each time. But it makes it more cumbersome if they want to go back and look at a question that maybe they didn't answer the first time, and the answer later occurs to them. It's more cumbersome for them to do things like that. And indeed, you can lock the questions after answering, and they can't go back and change them, which more often than not is to their benefit, because what, 70% of the time if a student changes an answer to a multiple choice or a multiple answer question, they change it from right to wrong. But I don't know. I'd rather give people, personally, would rather give people the chance, but that's an individual thing. If you are giving the quiz in a proctored situation, where the student's having to go to a proctor to take the test, you can require an access code, a password basically, which you give to the proctor, and the proctor provides it to the student. That prevents the student from accessing the test until they're in front of the proctor. If you were giving the test en masse to a group of students in a classroom, which some people do, but having them take it on Canvas so you don't have to deal with all the paper, you can filter the IP addresses of the computers so that they can't take it from home. They have to come in the lab and take it. Those are fairly unusual options. And then you have this same assign to block that we saw before. And you can set due dates and availability dates just as you did before for the other types of assessments. And then your test options are set. Now we get to the meat of the test, the questions. How do we add the questions? Well, you've got 3 different ways you can do that. You can enter questions one at a time from scratch. You can create the test in Canvas at the time you're building the quiz. A question at a time, just as if you're typing it out on a Word document. To do that, you click the button that says Add New Question. You're then given a question editing interface, question creation editing interface, where you can create any of the different question types that Canvas allows in an online test. And here are those question types. Multiple choice being the most common by far. True, false. Fill in the blank, all old favorites. Fill in multiple blanks, where there might be several blanks in the sentence the students have to fill in. Multiple answers, every student's favorite. Not a multiple choice question with potentially more than one right answer. If you really want to find out what they know and still have an objective test that Canvas can grade, this is a wonderful option. But prepare for hordes of students standing outside your office door with torches and pitchforks if you use a lot of those questions. Multiple drop-downs are like multiple choice questions. You might have a couple of different blanks in a sentence that can have multiple, and it's like a fill in the multiple blank question, only they get to pick from a list of things that might fill in that blank rather than having to just come up with it out of their imaginations. Matching questions and numerical answer questions, where you put some sort of word problem, a mathematical word problem on there, and they have to compute it out, and then they just type in the numerical answer. These are all objective question types. You can very easily specify the correct answer to Canvas, and Canvas can grade these for you. No more Scantron sheets, no more punched out pieces of paper with, on a pre-formatted answer sheet and so on. Canvas just takes care of all that. That's why some people in on-campus courses do their testing in Canvas. rather than doing it in class, because Canvas can grade the objective questions. Then you have things like mathematical formula questions or the ever popular essay question, your subjective question types, which are much more evaluative, but are harder to grade. Canvas can't yet grade essay questions. When it can, we all better be looking for a new profession. If it can do that, it can probably do a lot of other things. Believe it or not, there are artificial intelligence systems now that can grade and do grade essay questions. They've been used in certain types of online classes and in some standardized testing. And they do a phenomenally good job. They're at least 100% consistent. And that's a little frightening. I trust that I will be fully retired before that happens, and that my pension checks will keep coming. I don't even want to think about that. So think about that when you you're moaning because you have to grade your essay questions. It could be worse. And the ever popular file upload question, which is kind of like a homework assignment, a mini homework assignment. It has the same, it looks a lot like an assignment to the student. They have the same drop box that we saw with the homework assignment, but instead of just picking out an answer on the page, they have to create a file offline while they're taking the test, and then upload that file to the question drop box in order to satisfy that question. It allows you to put like a timed writing assignment into a test, because they only have so much time for the entire test, so they can't take more than a certain amount of time for that writing assignment. So if you typically do in-class writing assignments where they have a time limit, you can do that using a file. You can create a quiz that has one or more file upload questions in it, and do it. Have the students have to type the either upload a file or type the answer into a text box, but with a time limit. Yes, April.
No, Kathy first.
Oh, okay, Kathy, I'm sorry.
All right. One question with the matching, in case anyone's ever done that, because I had a situation where I thought it was like Blackboard with the matching, is that for some reason Canvas doesn't see matching. Learns if I have 5 things I want to match, and I have this 5 pairs of assignments, so it's easy to put in. They see that as one question, and if you want to, yes. So one question.
And Blackboard did too, yeah.
No, but they would say that was still worth 5 points. But they saw it as if you don't tell, like you can say it's 5 points, because like say you have 50 points, right. But the Blackboard had it so that I would say it's like 5 questions, 5 points, as long as students match it up. But Canvas sees it as one set of questions, 5 points, and then they'll split it into 5 different points. So I was wondering
Canvas will automatically assign partial credit if students make some matches correctly and others not. It will give the students a partial credit based on the number of correct matches they did.
But I wanted to be, each of those was worth 1 point. So I thought it was 5 questions, 5 points, but they saw it as one question, one set of questions, 5 points. And the student missed it. They divided it into so many points. So it was worth more points than it really was supposed to be worth.
Right. And it depends on, of course, the total number of points you assign to the question, indeed.
Yeah. So you have to do a subtraction thing, like the other multiple choice are 42, one set, and then another set are the matching ones. And each of those is a different set of questions. And then they pick one from each of those. So that was a horror the first time.
You find that out the first time, right?
Yeah.
And you can also use, you can put like a header question into a test, which is not actually a question. It's just some information that students need for immediately subsequent questions. You can do something like the following diagram applies to the next 4 questions. And then you can have questions asking about that diagram and so on.
I don't think I saw that one.
Yeah, that's the last one. So those are your question types. Multiple choice will, of course, be the most common. Let's make a multiple, see how easy it is to make a multiple choice question in Canvas. We just start off by typing the question text here, like which of the following software tools can be used to create a screencast. Staying with this context in this course we're creating. And you do have spell check, thank God. Okay, question mark. That's your question text. Then you enter your possible answers. Camtasia might be one answer. Snagit might be another. Zoom might be another. Wait a minute, Zoom's a meeting tool. We use that to create screencasts? Yeah, we're creating one right now. And of course, my favorite, all of the above. My students learned very early on that if they didn't know the answer, that they should pick all of the above, and 70% of the time they'd get it right. I had to struggle against that my entire career. Okay, so I've got all of the possible answers and the question text. The only remaining thing I need to do is tell Canvas the right answer because, again, as of yet, it can't figure it out.
But David,
we're all in trouble. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, it says in that first box that Camtasia is the correct answer. That's not a
well, no, but it just has that green arrow on the first answer by default.
Okay. Right.
It had to park it somewhere. But all I have to do to specify the correct answer, which is in fact all of the above, is to move my cursor down this column here and click in that column there, and I can move that arrow to the actual correct answer.
Okay.
But if it's shuffled, say all of the other choices are correct.
That's right. If you were thinking about shuffling the answers, you'd have to be careful about using something like all of the above. Yes, April.
Yeah, this goes back to when we were creating questions. What if I'm using pictures? Because I use a lot of visual aids in my tests. I'll have to describe what's going on. How do I just cut and paste the pictures in? Can I upload documents that already have pictures to the question box?
You have the full rich context editor here, or rich content editor here, excuse me. And that allows you to upload pictures, not just to the question text, you can even upload pictures to the answers. If you click this little pencil icon over here, and that will give you a rich content editor for the possible answers as well. So you can always put as many images into it, or even video. You can put videos into a question by using the rich content editor here. For instance, to put an image in here, I would just click the embed image button, and I would tell it I wanted to upload the image to Canvas, normally the way you do it, to the course files in your course. And then you click the upload file button. This is the process we went through yesterday to put an image into a Canvas page.
It looks just like it.
Yeah. It's just the same thing in the test question.
Okay.
And then we'd find pictures. Let's see. I think I have a.
Pick the file and then click open.
Yeah, click open. And add some alt text, that's all right. And then update it. So now that picture is right there. I need to get that out of the, I am somehow managed to get that right in the middle of the sentence. I didn't mean to do that. But Yeah, and I can't change that unless I redo it. But yes, you can put images into your questions and even into your possible answers. So
Okay.
you can, if you were teaching an art appreciation class, you could put a series of images of paintings in the possible answers. And which one is by Michelangelo or something like that.
And it looks great too, April. But sometimes it helps put a little label next to the picture, and that way, it, like as a matching or a multiple choice.
Okay, thank you.
So, good question. Once the question is set up the way I want it, I got to remember to, and ask me how I know this, I got to remember to update the question to save it. If you don't, Canvas just throws it away. But there, I've got that question into my test. I'm safe. And then you just rinse and repeat. Keep adding questions one after another until you've added all the questions you need of the different types. If you are lucky enough to have question banks, collections of test questions that you can use, you often get these from publishers, perhaps from colleagues, or you may create them yourself for use in later tests. If you're lucky enough to have those, you have other options for adding questions to your test. You can use the Find Question button to select specific questions from question banks that every student will get. If I click that button, it will look for question banks, and the question banks don't just live in this course. All of the question banks that you create in any course are available in any of your courses. So I've created these over the time I've been using Canvas. And here's one, a pool for screencasting. It's got 7 questions in it. Well, maybe some of those would be useful. If I select that pool or that bank of questions, it gives me a rough idea what each question is. Unfortunately, it doesn't give me a great deal of detail, so I have to be a little careful. But I can just pick questions that I like, multiples if I wish, and then click Add Questions at the bottom. And those questions are automatically added into the test. That's a lot easier, isn't it? Nice to have question banks, particularly question banks that you have looked at and ascertained that all the questions in there are usable. Because I will guarantee you, publishers' question banks have errors in them, and sometimes the questions just aren't very well written, or they don't align with what you've told your students. And you do want to check them out, but in that event, you can if you're selecting questions individually, you can avoid the ones that you don't want to use. But there's another way to use a question bank, and that's to create a question group. If we click that option, what the question group allows us to do is select a question bank and say, pull a certain number of questions at random from that question bank for each student. And the result, of course, is that no 2 students get the same test. They'll get questions from the same bank or banks. You can have multiple question groups pulling from different question banks. Each question group pulls from only one question bank. And here, that's a difference, Kathy, between this and Blackboard again. With Blackboard, a question set, which was the same thing as a question group here, used to be able to pull questions from multiple question banks. But in Canvas,
Yeah, I learned the hard way.
One question group goes to one bank only. But that's fine. You can just enter multiple question groups if you want questions from more than one question bank in the same test. So that question bank had, I think, 7 questions in it. So I might pick 3 of them at random for each student. so that each student gets a selection of questions on the same topics. Usually the question banks are organized by topic or chapter or whatever. And they'll be of the right sort of question, but they won't be the same question. So no two students get exactly the same test to take. And that's a major security enhancement in an online test. Students can't call one another up and ask, what's the answer to question 3? Yes.
When you pull the question, does it also pull the possible answers?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it pulls everything. Pulls the possible answers and the correct answer. The whole question. You'll have to specify a number of points per question at this point, because you can't give one question more credit than another in a question group. They all have to have the same value, but you got to decide what that value is. Other questions, you can change the point values individually. You have to link to a particular question bank, so that Canvas has to know where to pull these questions from. And I was going to use this one. I just highlight it and click on it and select bank. And when I've got all that set, I just hit create group. Don't forget to do that. Ask me how I know that. I've done that a few times demonstrating this. So now I've got a test with 1, 2, 3. These numbers will not appear in the final question. The question names don't appear in the test itself when the student sees it. So I've got 1, 2, 3 questions that I've picked specifically. One of them I just wrote. The 2 more I picked from a question bank specifically. I want everybody to get these 2 questions. But these 3 questions are going to be randomly selected. But every student will get a test with 6 questions in it, and an appropriate number of points. 6 points, since I've given each question 1 point credit. And when I've selected or created all the questions I need, I click Save and Publish. And the test is now available to students based upon the availability dates I said. If I hit preview, I have the option to preview the test so you can see what it's going to look like to students. And I must have selected the option to display 1 question at a time. Yeah, I did. Didn't mean to leave that in there, but that's how that works. Next, next, next. And these are the questions that are selected randomly. And when we're done, we've gotten to the end, the student can submit the quiz. So it's a very simple process. They have a timer here that counts them down and gives them the due date. They can hide that timer if it's distracting. Some students prefer not to see that. I can understand that. And they'll have a list of questions here, and a little check mark will appear when they answer a question, like question 6. Which of the following tools required for screencasting? A webcam? Nope. A microphone? Yep. Screencasting software, a web tool? Yep. No, not necessarily. Just actually a microphone is not required, come to think of it. You do have to have the software, but you don't have to record sound. So, okay, then I get a check mark for that question. So I can look up here at a glance and tell if I've answered all the questions or not. When I'm done, I can just submit the quiz. It warns me, whoa, you didn't answer some questions. So it's really trying to prevent the students from accidentally submitting a test without answering questions that they might know the answer to. And I'll submit, submits it anywhere, and boom, it goes into the gradebook. If it's entirely an objective test, a grade will appear in the gradebook for that student immediately. If not, if there's one or more essay questions in the test or file upload questions, for instance, what will appear in the gradebook is just a little symbol that indicates the student has submitted the test, and you have to go into the Speedgrader and grade the essay question or the file upload question before a number will appear, a grade will appear for the student. And that's basically how quizzes work in Canvas. Any more questions about that?
It's not a question, but just a kind of a recommendation to everyone. If you, like back where you were saying that if you say everything is worth 1 point in one set of questions, do not put your matching in there, because it'll,
Right.
like I said, that's where it'll say, if you wanted 4 parts and you wanted 4 points of the matching ones, like usually in a one, students go, oh, there's 5 parts, you know, at least 4 of those. It'll make each one 1/4 of a point in there.
Exactly. Indeed, when you're setting up, if you're setting up question banks, you usually want question banks that are homogeneous. That is, where you have all the
Multiple
questions
choice.
the same type of question, all multiple choice or all true false or all matching. Otherwise, you can end up with a situation like that.
Well, you
And
can have
indeed,
a multiple choice and true false, just not the matching.
yeah, multiple choice and true false will mix together well enough. But you, on the other hand, if you may want a certain proportion mix of multiple choice and true and false.
Yeah.
So you may want, in that event, it may be convenient to have your questions in question banks that are homogeneous.
Yeah.
How do you manage your question banks? Well, you go to your quizzes tool in the course menu. This is one of the prime reasons for clicking on the quizzes tool in the course menu. And you have this little unlabeled menu button in the upper right-hand corner, the quizzes tool. If you click on that, the main option is to manage your question banks. If you click on that option, I have one question bank that is associated with this course. Wait a minute, where'd all those others come from? Those were question banks that I made in other courses, yet they were still available to me in this course. That's a nice feature in Canvas. If you create question banks in one course, they're available in others. But this question bank lives in this course, and it's just got one question in it. That's the question that I created from scratch, and I can see what's in there by clicking on the name of the question bank, and there's that question that I just created. And any questions that you create by default go into a question bank called unfiled questions. You can create question banks to your heart's content. All you have to do is give it a name and press enter. And then you can click on the name of the question bank and you can add questions. That's just like the add question button for the test. But here you can edit, or you can create questions that go directly into a question bank. Some faculty, rather than creating tests in the Canvas interface, just create question banks. And they create questions for different topics in different banks. And maybe they may even segregate by question type, all multiple choice questions here, or multiple choice and true false in one bank, essay questions in another, file upload questions in another, whatever. And then they use those questions when they create tests by either creating question groups or just pulling questions specific individually from the test banks using the find questions button in the test. They don't actually generate questions in tests at all or in quizzes. They generate the questions in the question banks and then reuse them. That way they can reuse those, they can use those questions over and over and over again in different tests. should that be appropriate.
That's better than using the publisher's one, because I kept getting ones I didn't want in the test bank. Or I didn't
And
want those questions in the quiz.
Right. And
So
you
I'm
can,
gonna
and if you import question banks from publishers, they will appear in this list as well.
Yeah, and those again, I'm learning. So I'm going to do it this way, put my own questions in the bank and call it, my own questions for chapter 1.
Right.
That's a great
And
idea.
you can, if you have your publisher's questions in a bank like this, you can go in and you can edit them and take out inappropriate questions or bad ones, and then be more confident in using the publisher's test banks. You can do all that editing here. You can also very easily move questions from one test bank to another.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, that's, you can, let's see, that one doesn't have any questions in it, but if I go to this unfiled questions here, if there's more than one question bank in the course, I can always move or copy questions to another bank.
Okay.
So I could copy that one, either keep a copy or just move it entirely.
Okay.
And I can take it to bank 1. And now I've got a copy of that question in each of the 2 question banks. And I can move multiple questions. I can select multiple questions to move from one bank to another at need. So you have a lot of tools to help you work with question banks.
Yeah. That's where I really screwed up with the spring semester. So now I know
Yeah,
more.
indeed. And those question banks are available across courses as well. So
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
it's real handy. Canvas actually handles this very well. You can import question banks by going to your settings link in your course menu and selecting import course content. And if somebody's given you a question bank, either a publisher's rep or a colleague, it will be in the format of a QTI file. That's the file format for question bank exports from Canvas and from Blackboard. In fact, you can, if you have old question banks that worked in Blackboard, you can probably, depending on how old they are, you can probably import them into your Canvas course and use them there as well.
Yeah, they went without my knowledge.
When you imported your Blackboard course, you got them automatically.
Right.
There are some question types in Blackboard that aren't in Canvas, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So if you import a Blackboard question bank, you may not get all of the questions, but you'll get most of them, probably. Yeah. So it's still a useful thing. And if you get a question bank you don't want, you can always delete it.
Dave, I have a question. Dave,
absolutely.
Is there a fill-in? I thought I saw in the quiz the fill-in. Could you just show us that?
The fill in the blank question? Sure. Let's edit this quiz. I can always go back and add questions as long as no student has taken the quiz. Once the students begin taking the quiz, you can't add questions for obvious reasons. But let's add a new question here in the Questions tab.
Yeah, and that happened to me once. I created a test at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And
somebody found it.
The students started taking it, and when I wanted to make a change, I couldn't make a change. I couldn't figure out
why.
Exactly.
Oops, don't publish it until you're ready.
I didn't realize it had been published. I must have published it or whatever.
Making it at 2 a.m., things like that will happen. A fill in the blank question. And it tells you here, enter your question text, then define all possible correct answers for the blank. Students will see the question followed by a small text box to type their answer.
What are the colors of the flag?
There you go. Well, how about
Or the following
which of the following
yeah.
colors? Let's see.
What's the color of money?
Not quite there. I was just about to have need a multiple drop down.
What's the color of American $1 bill?
List one color found in the U.S.
Flag.
Can't seem to find the space bar on this keyboard. I got to swap that out. Okay.
Well, no, you said you wanted a blank. So the American flag has the color red, blank, and blank.
Yes. And that would be a multiple fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank, yeah.
Which is
I think it's
another
US,
question
right?
type you can use, but we'll keep it as simple as possible the
Simple,
first
all right.
time. Then we have to list some possible answers. Red, white,
Yellow.
this is not multiple choice. These are correct answers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these are correct answers, all of them. You can add possible misspellings in.
Yeah.
The computer is very rigid. So if somebody misspells white, they won't get credit. So you could include, or whatever, common misspellings or things that are so close. It's my objection to fill in the blank questions is you can never come up with every possible close thing so you want to be very careful with fill in the blanks. You don't want to put anything in there where two synonyms would be, or maybe multiple synonyms would be an acceptable answer, and you don't think of all of them, and the student puts in an acceptable answer and gets it counted wrong. That's not fair. So I'm not a big fan of fill in the blank questions. I'd rather use an essay question that I have to look at and grade, even
Like
if it's just
woman
one
or
word.
female. Like
But
you read
that's
woman and they said
yeah.
female.
But this is how this works. So then we update the question, and if we save the test. Now, if we preview it, this is just for you. Only you have previews. Oh shoot! I forgot to take off that. Personally, I detest showing questions one at a time. I always hated something like that as a student.
Yep.
Yeah, here's what it looks like to the student.
Okay.
They get a text box.
Okay.
And if they type in red and submit it, they get the answer right.
Okay.
See, for ESL, I would say write the contraction for we are.
Right.
So there's only one.
Right.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Exactly. And you can put multiple blanks in a sentence, more than one, up to, I think, any number, if that were appropriate. You can also do multiple drop downs, where instead of having to type something into a blank, they can pick from a list.
Okay.
Like, so you could say the colors in the U.S. flag are, boom, and then you could have a series of options: red, white, blue, purple, green, whatever, and they can pick. Or you could have three blanks. The colors in the U.S. flag are blank, blank, and blank, but instead of just filling the blanks, they could be drop-down menus from which they could pick colors and not have to type them in.
Yeah.
That's a multiple drop-down question. They're fun to play with, and it gives you a lot of flexibility in how you present your multiple. And some question types are better at evaluating certain types of knowledge than others. And I don't have to tell you that. You've been writing tests, all of you have been writing tests a long time. Canvas just gives you an interface that will allow you to put that same test into a web page in Canvas that the students can access and answer the questions through without anything ever having to hit paper. So you don't have to haul reams of test papers around, and you don't have to worry about what was always my nightmare, which was losing one of them. You can't lose a student's test paper if they take it in Canvas. I did that. I can twice in my career. I can still remember both of those times, and it was awful because I had to jump through a lot of hoops to feel right about it myself, to give the student their due. And I never felt like I was entirely fair with those students, no matter what I did. And that was just awful. With Canvas, you don't have to worry about that. Canvas there's never lost a test for anybody. It's very reliable in that regard. So those are good tests. One thing I do want to show you real quick is how to accommodate DSPS students on tests. That always comes up as a question. You do that, whoops, I clicked too soon. You do that by going to the test edit screen, or rather not even to the edit screen. You just bring up the test as the instructor, and you have an option to moderate the quiz, assuming it's been published. You can moderate it. You will then see a list of your students. I only have the one test student in there, so I'll have to pick on him. Opposite each student will be a little pencil icon, an edit icon. That's a universal edit icon. And you can give extra attempts, and you can add time to each attempt for just that student. So if this is a 10-minute quiz, requirements for DSPS students range from 1.5 times to 2 times the time that everybody else gets. So if this were a 10-minute test, I might have to give them an extra 10 minutes. This is how much extra time you get, not the total time. And if I needed to give a student another chance to take the test, I could either add an extra attempt or multiple extra attempts, or I can just manually unlock the quiz for that particular student so they could take it again. And then save the results. And that student gets 10 extra minutes on each attempt. So you don't have to make another test or jump through a lot of hoops to give your DSPS students extra time or extra chances to take the test. Indeed, there may be a circumstance where you need to give a student a do-over because something went wrong. A technical problem happened and they couldn't take the test or something. And that's where you could do that. Another thing, a request that you will get from time to time is, can I take the test early or late because I'm going to be out of town, or I was in the hospital, or my grandmother died, or whatever. And right now that's a real probability. God, I was reading an article today about people talking about, oh, we don't need the old people anyway. Just cull them out of the population. The COVID will take care of that. So,
I've lived my life.
well, our lives are, for too many of us I see in this session right now, our lives have become circumscribed because we don't dare go out no matter what everybody else is doing, because we get this, we're liable to die. I have a much better chance of it than many people. But in any case, let's say a student had a good reason for needing to take a test early or late. You can go to the quiz and edit it. And that's where that assignment block comes in handy at the bottom. Normally, you just have one of these assign blocks. But if you need to give other people different due dates and availability dates, you can do that. Come to think of it, I don't have any students in this course, so I can't do it. I can't show you this here. Let me go to another course where I actually have some test students enrolled. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to explain this. And I think I have that same test. Why screencasting quiz? There it is. I can edit that test. And I've given everyone from February 22nd to April 30th to take that test. Let's say somebody shows up and, oh my God, you know, I just got out of the hospital, I've been in jail for the last 2 months or something, and I need to take the test. What do I do? Well, I can go and add another assign block. That's what this add button down here is for. That took me a while to figure that one out. I can assign this add block to just one or more students. If I had 2 of them in the same boat who were cellmates, I could assign it to both of them. You will not always see all of your students listed down here. You may have to type the first few letters of their name in order to see them. And let's say I want to give test student 3 and test student 5 a chance to take the test late. I can then give them a different due date and a different available until date, probably the same date in each case. And now that student, those 2 students only can take the test up to June 24th. And then I save the change, and that becomes part of the. So you can have multiple due dates, multiple availability dates for different students for the same test. It means you do not have to create multiple tests and copy one to the other in order to accommodate legitimate student requests for different dates. You just add assignment block or assign blocks to that test, and you have pretty much all the flexibility you need in order to do that.
Okay, Dave, when I called
Yeah.
Kevin, I had that situation where I had a student who, because he was in South Korea because of this event, he had to stay in for 2 weeks. So that's not his fault. So they showed me how to do that last one, but I didn't know that one, that first example you showed about the different
Adding time.
adding time. Yeah, I was shown the last one and I can make adjustments there. But the other thing is, usually if a student has a legitimate reason, I let them take the test without any penalty. But I don't think it's fair if a student's just lazy, forgot, I didn't see it.
Oh, no. Like I say, if there's a legitimate reason, you can do this.
But I couldn't figure out a way to penalize them other than just going in and changing the points.
Yeah.
There's a way to something called fudge. If you try to curve the points, you can add an extra points or whatever.
You can add fudge points, and fudge points can be negative.
Okay. So I can put like -5 there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you can, there is an option in the gradebook. You can just leave the due date as it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell the gradebook that if something's late, knock off so many points or so many percentage points for each day or each week that it's not submitted. You can have that set up automatically, so that if a student submits a homework assignment late, the later it is, the less credit they get automatically. You grade the assignment and you give them what they would normally get if they turned it in on time, and then the gradebook can automatically adjust it for lateness and chop a certain percentage off each day or each hour. And so that's a neat feature in the gradebook. Then you don't have to go through and manually compute fudge points and things like that. You can just automatically penalize them by a consistent amount.
Can you show that quickly? I've seen a different color when it says late, and some students have even gotten upset when they said, it said I was late.
Okay, yeah, we had some gradebook questions earlier. Let me go and take a look. Let's go and take a look at the gradebook in this course, which has some grades in it. And I'll show you where that setting is first. It is under the settings, the gear icon here in the gradebook in the upper right-hand corner, under the late policies tab.
Oh.
And there's an option to automatically apply deduction to late submissions. And a late submission is by definition anything submitted after the due date. In order to allow late submissions, of course, you have to either not set a display until date, or you have to set the display until date to sometime after the due date. And that if the due date and the display until date are the same, you'll never have late submissions. But if you do, you can set a late submission deduction percent, which might be, say, 10%, just for the sake of argument. And you can apply that by the day or the hour.
Oh, my.
If you do it by the day, every day that goes by, the student loses 10% of what they would otherwise have gotten. So if they got an 80, they actually scored 80% on an assignment, if they were a day late, they'd get, in fact, a 72, because you knock 10% off, 8 points off. And that would all happen automatically, and you don't have to do anything to make it happen. You can set a floor below which they can't go, though the default is to have the deductions just continue until they get nothing. If they're too late, they get zip. But you can set a floor for that too, so that if they won't, say, lose more than half their credit or something like that. But that's, somebody wanted that. I'm sure. I don't see why you wouldn't just leave that at a 0. If the student is that late, there's no reason they should get any credit.
But you could put,
and you can do the same thing for missing submissions too.
Oh, okay.
So that's a useful thing in the Gradebook. Also had a question about, what does this look like when the student submits something? What do you see? Well, if it was a quiz that the system could grade, you just see numbers. And those pop in immediately, and you don't have to do anything, make them
I
happen.
wouldn't put a 9.5 if they were all just, if it was out 13.
I believe that was a case where there was a question that had
matching?
No, it wasn't a matching question, but it had more than one answer. I think it was a multiple drop down, and the student got one of them right and one of them wrong, so they got partial credit. So it's quite possible for Canvas to award partial credit for a question if it's the right kind of question.
Can I?
Or like if you have a multiple answer question and 2 of the answers are correct and 3 are wrong, the student could get, if the student got one of those answers right and one not right, they would then get partial credit. So it's not uncommon to see fractional, even more complex fractions than that.
Like with the flag, if they got red and white but didn't get blue.
Exactly, exactly. And it was a 1-point question.
A single answer, like one answer only. I got some feedback that was like 9.5 or 13.4. So that shouldn't.
No, if it were a single answer question, unless you put in a fractional number of points for the question, it would be an integer. It would be a whole number.
Right. Okay. Okay.
That's going to happen only in certain circumstances.
Okay.
If, on the other hand, a student has submitted something that Canvas can't grade, like
something to read,
like a homework assignment.
Yeah.
This is a homework assignment. Canvas is not real good about telling you what each one of these is, though you can, if you have your different assessment types segregated into assignment groups, you can see only your homework assignments if you like. And that's a homework assignment. I know that's a homework assignment now. So this is what I see. This little icon here indicates that there's a, let me blow that up a little bit. That's a little hard to see. That indicates that there's a submission. And I see you, Victoria. I'll be with you in a second. To grade that, you just click on the little icon and click the right arrow next to it. That brings in a, let me shrink this back down so we can see it. That brings in a pull-in panel. And if it's late or excused or something like that, you can see that here. Otherwise, you can go right to the Speedgrader, which is your grading interface. And here's the submission. You can read it. You can mark it up. And you do get spell check even in the little bitty boxes. I love this. I love that. You can then, if there's a rubric, you can view that. I didn't have a chance to deal with the rubrics today, unfortunately, but this is what a rubric looks like. And you can just click the squares in the rubric and save it. And whoops, I should have assigned that grade. Why didn't it do that? That's interesting. 5 to total point 7. That should have appeared here. Okay, I'll check that out. And then submit the grade. So that's the grading process for a homework assignment. You can also add comments. You can even do it this way. Nice work, period. And speak your comments. If you're using Google Chrome as your web browser, that's a Chrome feature that's integrated with Canvas. This is the only place that works in Canvas as far as I know. But anyway, you can add comments, you submit the grade, that now appears in the gradebook. We go back to the gradebook, there's the grade. So that's how the grading process works. And, we had a question specifically about how do you grade discussions. Let me bring up my discussions. Here's an example of a student who posted to that "What could I do with screencasting" discussion that we created. You can do that. You can grade this in the Speedgrader too. And what the Speedgrader gives you in this case is every post that student made. It selects out his or her posts and lists them for you so you can view them at a glance. Rather than having to work your way through the entire discussion and pick out that student's participation, it pulls them out for you. They're out of context. You might need to see the full discussion to get the context, and you can jump right back to that from within the Speedgrader quickly, but usually this is sufficient. Obviously, this was the student's primary post, and these two were replies to other students. And you can read them, make a decision, give them a grade. It's out of 10 points. By the way, if you want to give extra credit on an assignment that's especially well done, there's nothing stopping you from putting a number in this box that's higher than the possible points. The possible points are just there to provide a denominator for the fraction when you're determining the percentage grade for the assignment. But then you can submit that. And now so that's how you grade discussions and what a discussion submission looks like. Very easy, very quick. Graded discussions is pretty snappy. And you always have the option to give all sorts of feedback. I mean, you can give tons of feedback to all of these assessment types, to the point where you can spend way too much of your time giving feedback. But students, I will tell you, students appreciate that feedback more than anything else you could give them. They appreciate the feedback more than extra points.
Is there a way for a student to see what they got correct or incorrect?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A student can see what they submitted as well, and they can see any comments that you left for them and any feedback. They do that by going to show you that, of course, I have to be a student.
Yeah.
You can't see what the student sees.
Right.
You see their grades in the gradebook, and you
Yeah.
can see what you've sent to them and all that, and the comments you've made, but you can't see it just the way they do. So what you can do to see what that's like is to go to your test student. You can go to Student View from your home screen. And I think this student has some grades in here. The student has a grades link in the course menu, just as you do. But instead of, this doesn't show them the gradebook, obviously. It shows them their grades only. And here we go. The student's got several grades.
Okay.
This column out here, the last column, is the feedback column.
Oh, so they can see that.
They can see that. Let's see. Let me go to that same, just for consistency, let me go to that defined screencasting assignment. This student has submitted this assignment. They've gotten an 8 out of 10. Why? Well, they can click here and they can see the rubric, and that tells them why I gave them that credit. To see other feedback, they can click on the name of the assignment and view feedback. Also, any comments that I've made, apparently I didn't make any in this case, but any comments I've made will appear over here as well. But they can see things, they can see their actual submission. And if I've done any of that markup stuff, which I didn't do in this case, they can see it. But this is a little complex.
Okay.
Okay.
So what I would recommend is that you give the students a link to a tutorial of some sort that shows them how to evaluate their own grades and see any feedback. You can get that from the Help button in the Canvas system menu under the Canvas Guides, Student Guides, Grades, and let's see, oh, that's not grades, there we go. How do I view my grades in a current course? That link right there will send them to a guide that explains what I just did and a lot more. And you can just get that URL right there, and you can put that into your Getting Started module as a web link, as an external URL. I also have a video tutorial for that in the workshop archives. If you search for Canvas grades in the search box here. Here's one, check your student grades in Canvas, and it basically shows them what I just showed you with a little bit more detail.
Okay.
So you can give them that link too. Or both.
Good. Yeah.
Some students do better with print and pictures, and others do better with actually seeing it happen in real time. Like you were explaining it to them live. The print is a little faster for the student to appreciate, but the video generally is more effective in the long run. So it's nice to have both. And in this case, you can have both.
One more question I have is, how do I rearrange where things are in the grade book, because some assignments came before other assignments that were earlier.
Right.
The
Right.
order of them.
Well, you're going to love this. This is one of my top 2 or 3 favorite features of Canvas. If let me display everything here, all assignments, all grades. If I want to rearrange the columns in my grade book,
Yeah. Oh, easy as that. Okay.
I love that. And there's no indication you can do that anywhere. You just have to know that.
No, I was so frustrated.
Believe me, I understand. One caution about that: the order that your columns appear in the grade book do not determine the order that the students see the grades in their grades display.
Oh.
That they control. You can't control its form.
Okay.
By default, I think they show by due date to the students, the earlier first. But the students can arrange them in other ways. They have options to sort that display at their convenience. So you can't determine the order in which they see their grades.
Okay.
And Dave,
but it works for you, though.
Yeah, it will work better for me.
I spend the whole time just sliding those grade things around. It's really annoying, but it is kind of helpful. But in the rubrics, was that preset, or do you have to write your own rubrics?
Oh, you mean when you get a blank shell, or when you first put assignments in, how do they appear?
No, the rubrics thing that you were showing the grading, because I never used that, but it seemed like it was preset, but you can write your own if you wanted to.
Oh no, I wrote that one. They're all custom generated. You have to make your own rubrics.
Okay, then I won't do it. That's too much time.
That's something I cover in the grading part. I show you how to make a rubric. It's not terribly tedious. It does require a lot of thought about how you're going to grade, and you can't just at the last minute take a look at it and say, looks like a 5 to me. You have to have a process, but it makes you a more consistent grader, and the grading is faster because you can just click, click, click and pick the boxes in the rubric that fit the student's performance, and you don't have a lot of thinking on the back end. So in the long run, if you create rubrics, you save yourself a lot of time in grading and a lot of angst. But I'd like to tell you I always make rubrics.
Okay, because I used to have, I always have a grade sheet and in the classroom, and then I give 20 things that I'm grading them on, and it's graded from 1 to 5 or 0 if they don't do it. So that might be the kind of thing I could turn into a rubric if I wanted to. Or...
Precisely. That's the hard part is done. If you have that worked out, the mechanics of creating the rubric are fairly trivial. It's the thinking behind creating the rubric that's the hard part. If you've already done that, I would strongly encourage you to make rubrics from those grading guides, and it will save you an immense amount of time in the long run.
Okay.
And I'll be happy to demonstrate that whenever.
All right.
Were there any questions here that I have not answered? Let me check the chat tool. Can I quickly show we did that? Okay, here's an interesting question. It's a math question for a test, I presume, or an assignment. You want them to upload their scratch work from their loose leaf. What's the easiest way for them to get that uploaded? Well, they'd have to make a picture of it. And if you were doing, say, a homework assignment, and the homework assignment was the evaluation of a particular math equation, the student could solve the equation on paper and take a picture of it, and then upload the picture file, the image file from their phone. If it were on a test, if the formula question were on a test, you could do a file upload question and do the same thing. The student could load their work. If it were like a numeric answer question that Canvas could grade, you could make a numeric answer question followed immediately by a file upload question that said, upload your work that you use to arrive at the answer above, which would also eliminate a lot of opportunity to cheat. Because if somebody couldn't produce a convincing worksheet whereby they arrived at a particular answer for a numeric problem, you could give them credit for neither one, things like that. So that's an interesting question. I like that. And there would be, but it all kind of revolves around the possibility that the student has a smartphone or a digital camera that they can use to take a picture of writing on a piece of paper. Without that, there's no really good way to do it. The vast majority will, but not everybody. And you might have to make accommodations in a case like that. I signed up for the faculty certification program. How do I know it's approved? What do I need to receive as an instruction to complete the program? Can you check to see where I am right now? Sure. Pauline. Is Pauline? Yes, she's still here. Good. Sure, I'll look. Let me pull that onto another screen because I don't want to expose the gradebook, and that I'll just kill my share for a second. And Pauline, I'll look up and see if you're in there.
All right.
And in the meantime, while I'm doing that, does anybody have another question? Because it takes a certain amount of time for the gradebook in this course to come up. You saw how quickly the gradebook was coming up in that example course. This gradebook takes about 8 to 10 seconds to load every time I click on it. So any other questions?
April had a hand up and then I'll ask a question.
Who's that?
April had her hand up and then I'll ask a question.
April.
My question has nothing to do with this. It's a very stupid one. I asked you this on the first.
You know the reply to the stupid question statement.
Yeah, well, this is
The only
very
stupid
basic.
question you don't is the one you don't ask. Okay.
I've been trying to get an answer.
I always say there's no stupid question, just dumb mistakes because you didn't ask.
Okay, well, I tried to ask this the first time, and what happened is as you were answering, someone else interrupted, so I didn't get it.
I'm sorry.
That's not your fault. Everyone's excited. Then on the second session, I was disturbing my poor colleague. I just cannot sign up to have it say from my name to everyone. What it currently shows is from me to everyone. And my wonderful colleague, Kathy, just was trying to show me how to do it. And it's hard to do it.
In the chat tool.
Yes.
Okay, just a second. And
I go to the chat tool.
I'll share that with you in a second. We'll take a look and see if what I'm seeing is what you're seeing.
Yeah, it says from me to everyone instead of my name. You do see my name and my email address, but I just can't do it. And it's very frustrating because it shows you how basic with this.
I understand.
You do it right.
Pauline, I do not see you in that course yet.
Well, I'm not Pauline, I'm April. I'm April.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry, I was working. Pauline was the one who had the question about whether she was enrolled.
Oh, I see.
Pauline, did you enroll in the current cohort or in the cohort that starts on July 1st?
I enrolled in both. I think that the first one in for 20. So that's mean the end of this.
You're not in the 1921, the current cohort. That may just mean that they haven't yet gotten around to enrolling you. That process takes a little while and they have a huge backlog. So I would hope though that they would have enrolled you by now, because that you don't have a lot of time to finish that first cohort. I can check the other course. I think I'm in that one too. Let me find that.
to sign up for that. For the second one.
Yeah.
It start
Here's the
last-
2021. Let me look at that and see if you're in there. No, they haven't actually put anyone in there yet.
Oh,
Let me think.
they do.
No, I don't have access to the enrollment spreadsheet for that one. So probably they haven't done it yet, but it should happen soon. When did you submit the form?
Last week.
Oh, darn, you should be in there by now. Do me a favor, because of my minuscule attention span at my advanced age, would you mind sending me an email asking me to check that, and I'll find out somebody who knows, and I'll get back to you.
Will you repeat your email address, please?
I've forgotten to do that. I will absolutely do that, and that will also take me to the chat tool so I can address April's question.
I see April's name in there. You did it correctly.
But it doesn't show from my name to someone. It just shows from me to someone.
No, it says from April Cook to everyone. Or Cook to
Really?
everyone. Yes,
Yeah, it does on we see that, yeah.
Oh, but I don't. Oh, so you mean I actually did something
Yeah,
correctly? Okay.
Yeah. When
Well,
you
good. We've done that.
When you post, it just says from me.
Okay.
But we see your name.
All right. Thank
That
you.
answered that question.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's my email address. dgibberso. I couldn't afford the N. dgibberso@sdccd.edu.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. And thank you for sending me the reminder. And you're always welcome to email me with any questions you have. Not just that. Okay, and there's my email. And remember, you can save this chat log, so you don't have to jot that down, by going to the lower right-hand corner of the chat window where there's 3 little dots next to one another. Click on the 3 little dots and you get an option to save the chat. That saves it at that moment. Then if you click Show in Folder, it should show you where it saved it, which is in a folder called Zoom, in your Documents folder, in a subfolder that's dated and timed now. And the chat log is named Meeting Saved Chat. You just double click that and you can see the chat tool, or the chat log.
Thank you.
And you can keep that. All right. Other questions? I'm here as long as you have questions. On anything. It doesn't have to be Canvas assessments.
I'm stuck in module 3 because I couldn't figure out how to comment on other people's posts of humanizing. So,
Module 3, you said?
yeah, the humanizing module.
Let me, let me go pull that up.
Mine. I only found one other person who had posted, and we can't move on to the next section until we've posted something else to someone else, or discussion comment.
Let's go to that module. Module 3. And here's your discussion.
I would like to finish before June 30th, but there's still those.
Yeah, I know. I have, and these restrictions that they've put in here that prevent you from progressing until you've finished certain other things,
yes,
have generated a lot of frustration.
Yes.
And I passed that along. I've gotten a lot of feedback on that, particularly in the sessions I've done on the training course itself. And I passed that along, and the dean has made a recommendation that they take those out in the next iteration of the course.
Okay.
I don't know that that's going to help, that they're going to be able to do that this time.
Okay.
But I did make that suggestion because, quite frankly, personally, I've never been a fan of preventing people from moving around in the modules as they wish,
Right.
because not everybody thinks and operates in a linear fashion like this.
Yes.
And I'm not enamored. I understand the advantages to that sort of, the theoretical advantages to that sort of pedagogy, but I think they're probably overcome by the piss-offedness that it generates. So that's just me. But anyway, let's take a look at this one.
So Dave, if we submit our stuff by June 30th, but if we have to fix stuff and they don't get back to us on time, will we still get credit for it?
Yes, you will. I gave them that feedback too, and pointed out that there's no way that they were going to finish all the grading by June 30th for all the people who had completed the course, because there are over 1,000 people in there right now. And they agreed that they would have to keep the course available to people who are already enrolled in it until they had graded everything for everyone who had completed the course, who had submitted all the assignments. So you will get feedback, and you will have access to go back and fix things until everyone has been fully graded.
As long as we submit everything by June 30th.
As long as you have everything submitted by June 30th. If you don't have everything submitted, they won't give you access. They will not allow you to submit anything after that date.
Yeah.
And you'll have to start over again in July. So just get everything submitted. You'll be okay. You'll be able to finish.
Thank
And you
you.
can see the grade book that you submitted, correct? Just like our students do with the little
Yes,
icon.
you can see if you've submitted or not in your grades tool, just as your students will be able to. Okay, so the prompt here for this
Discussion.
Are you
is,
sharing the screen? Because I don't see anything.
oh, I'm not. Thank you. Thank you. That's why I asked earlier for you to remind me if I messed that up. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now let me bring that over. Here we go. This is the one we're talking about, the 3.3 discussion, welcoming your students. Is that right? Okay. So what were you supposed to do? You were, it asked you a couple of questions.
Yes.
And this is, what do you think of this analogy that's used?
Yes.
What specific, so you're asked to create a post of your own that contains this information.
Yes.
First three. Then you're asked to reply to at least two of your colleagues.
Yes.
And that's where you're hung up, right?
That's where I'm hung up, because I can only find one person.
Well, here are each one of these. If you just scroll down, each one of these here
Oh, because I was leaving it going.
is a separate post, and every post has a reply button.
Okay, so I don't have
So
to.
if I wanted to reply to Kelly, I'd click reply, and I get a text box. Actually, I got a full rich content editor.
I do
and I
not
can
have to
reply.
leave the module page to.
I'm sorry?
I do not have to leave the module page to get to the.
Oh, no. That's the idea. You should not ever
Okay, so that's
have
what
to
I
leave
was
the
doing.
module page. That's the idea behind modular design. You don't have to go over here to the discussions entry.
That's what I was doing. Okay.
Yeah, just come at it through the module. That's the way the whole course is designed. The idea behind these modules is that a student should almost never have to click on anything that's not in a module.
Okay. So
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, because I already submitted mine. I'm just not getting past commenting on two other.
Right.
Yeah. So
And you can do that.
That's where I'm stuck. So just scroll down from there.
Yeah, just scroll down.
Okay.
And all the posts are, it takes a second for it to load.
Okay, maybe that's the problem. It wasn't loading.
You might not have waited long enough for it to load, yeah, because this is so big There are hundreds of posts here,
Oh, yes, yeah,
and you can pick any of them.
okay.
There's the most, no, that they're not arranged by, and there are in fact multiple pages. I'll take that back. There
Okay,
are
Yeah,
just
that
hundreds
helps-
and
that
hundreds.
helps
Just
a
pick
lot.
two.
So you can
And
reply to
reply.
someone's reply, not just to someone's post?
well, replying to someone's post on the humanizing questions.
Okay, not to someone's answer to someone else's post. It has to be someone's original post.
Right, and so it
Right.
says to keep positive, keep the tone positive. So, you know, if someone else says, you know, I like the idea of the sit-down restaurant, I can comment, you know, I like the idea of the sit-down restaurant as well, because it makes more sense than, you know, fast
Right.
food. And,
The whole point of here, of course, is to teach you how discussion forums work,
okay,
so that you can imagine creating your own and how you might use them.
And that's kind of hard to see, Dave, because like there's the original post and then there's people replying to that post, and the
Right.
indentation is like so tiny that
Yes, but they are also surrounded by white space if you look carefully.
I need more space. Is there any way to adjust that, or is it just me?
You can maximize it, but no, there's a limit to what you can do.
Okay.
Like here's the end of a thread.
Okay.
That's how you find it.
And I have to make sure I go to the original
Go
post.
to the top,
Reply.
because some of these threads are, because people just reply to the first person. You know, there's
Yeah.
the top of that thread. So this all started with Timothy Felton. So you may have to go down a ways before you get to some that are not hugely, like here's a thread that's a lot shorter. It's a lot easier to tell that this was the original post and these were replies, though usually too the replies are much shorter than the original post.
Okay, so don't
So
reply.
that's another way to key.
Okay, I'm afraid of doing that. And why are some blue dots?
Let's see. That indicates unread. That allows you to mark a post as unread.
Okay. So blue
And when
is
you read a post, that should go away.
okay. That
Okay,
helps.
so
Thank you so much. Thank you
those
so
little blue dots, you are certainly welcome.
So
Are
Dave,
meant to
since we're
indicate
here-
things you have already read or have not read. Yes.
Me?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm curious, you know how when we respond, so we answer the question and then we reply to two other people posts. And I'm interested in knowing if we look at our grade, it shows our reply and it shows the two responses that we post to
Yes.
responded to other people replies. Is that automatic, or do we have to set? I like that feature, so do I have to automatically set it like that in my
No,
account?
that's automatic. When
Okay.
when a student participates in a discussion topic, and then you as the instructor go into the Speedgrader and pull up that student's responses, you'll see only their responses. The Speedgrader pulls those out for you, and that happens automatically.
all
But
right.
I'm
So,
talking about, like, you know how we respond to the questions, right, for our
Yes.
part, and then we have to reply to two other people. But it show in my grade book, my grade book
You
account.
can go into your grades tool and see that. Yes,
Okay.
you can see just your posts in there.
So will we be able
can
to see the
You can
students?
see what the instructors see when they pull up your submissions in the Speedgrader.
okay.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
One of the assignments.
Yes.
Are
Go
you-
ahead.
All right, one of the assignments I have is that students have to create surveys, their own surveys, and the survey that they have in Canvas is like a survey of something going on in your class, like how many people read the
Right.
assignment or something like that. So it's,
Yeah,
they-
students can't create surveys in your course. I don't
Okay.
think. No.
I give points to students who create the surveys, but not to the students who respond, because that was the only way that it seemed to work for students that they could see everyone who responded to their surveys that way. But it was just
Right. And of course, you just set that up in your instructions and in your grading rubric.
That was just kind of, it was like cumbersome because like I'm seeing something there and I don't give them a score for that. But
Right.
is there a better way to do that? Or because there's nothing
No,
that's,
the Speedgrader is going to show you every post, whether it's an original post or a reply to someone else's post in the Speedgrader. You just have to choose what you're going to evaluate, what you're going to
I want a shorter way to do it.
That's,
Sorry for whining.
that's
No-
all
no
Canvas
whining,
can do.
Kathy, no whining.
It will
There's
pull
no
out
whining in
every
Canvas.
post by that student in that topic, and you can't change that.
Oh, there's no way to change that. All right. Okay.
That's on my syllabus, no whining.
No whining. I
Right.
know.
We did have more fine control over some things in Blackboard than
Yes.
we do in
Okay.
Canvas.
Yeah.
But the price for that was occasionally incredible complexity. Even in doing simple things in Blackboard, it was incredibly complex to do because you had all these options.
I know, but I figured them out.
The people who wrote Canvas had a different design philosophy. They wanted it to be easy to use, especially for students. And if they had to give up some functionality to make that happen, they did it. And that's why they're so stingy about adding new features to Canvas, because they don't want it to turn into Blackboard. Because, you know, look what we're using instead of Blackboard. Even though there were a lot of Blackboard people, a lot of people using Blackboard in the California community colleges before the switch.
Yeah.
And before they picked one winner. And almost everybody on the committee that had a vote, even the majority of people who use Blackboard, chose Canvas. There were only 3 schools at the time who actually used Canvas at the time that decision was made in the whole state of all the community colleges. And everybody, the selection of Canvas was unanimous, primarily because of its ease of use for students. And the rest of us just have to get by without those features. In some cases, there are workarounds for the things we lost from Blackboard. In some cases, there are not.
Well, that was a key.
Manually. So
Yeah.
that's where we are. And that's the design philosophy that Canvas espouses. And I will tell you, from being the support person for the numerous pilot courses we taught on Canvas with student groups before we turned it loose for the entire institution, I rarely got questions from about how to use Canvas from students, except for how do I log in, you know, or I can't remember my password. I can count on 2 hands, on 10 fingers, the number of times I got questions other than that from students. Students just seem to get it. And that makes it worthwhile, I think.
Oh. And I noticed that by them saying that you have to finish one module before you go to the next. And it seems to me
that is a choice on the part of the course designers, not
Okay.
a requirement in Canvas.
But it seems that I think because I know I want to finish my grading before I get into, even though I've been enrolled a long time, I just haven't gotten down to taking the course and everything. And
Right.
but I will get it done. But it seems to me that creating a video takes more time, and it should be at the end of the choices, not before you get to welcoming people or humanizing the course.
It used to be in module 7, and they moved it up to module 2, and I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry. It does
something really good.
It does really take some time, particularly if you've never done it before. If you've done it once or twice, that assignment can be done in 15 minutes.
Mhm.
But if you haven't done it before, it takes quite a bit of time and effort.
And if you want to use something you want to use later on, you want to do a job.
But I agree 100%. As a matter of fact, I'm the one who insisted that question be in there in the old course, because video is such an incredibly important content type in online courses that everybody, whether they choose to use it in their courses or not, needs to know how to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for one thing, hanging somebody up because it's taken them a while to work through that video question makes no sense to me. Because you could be moving ahead and doing other easy things and so on in between slogging away on the video. And I have made that suggestion. So,
like, I like the grade.
I just don't think
the harder stuff.
Stopping people in their tracks because they're having trouble with one question is a good idea. So I empathize.
Because not like you need that skill to go to the next one. I can understand if you need.
No, you don't. You just need to have that done before you finish the course. And that's how we used to have it set up. You couldn't finish the course unless you'd gotten full credit on that assignment. We wouldn't let you move it. We wouldn't let you finish, but we'd let you do everything else.
Okay.
Okay.
But no way to change that right now.
It would probably be quite disruptive to rip out all those hard stops right now. But I don't think they're going to continue that practice in the next, but they might. There are pedagogical reasons for doing it that way. And different people have different thoughts on that. I accept that. But I hate to see all this frustration.
Yeah, well, with 1,000 people.
Particularly when people are under time pressure.
Yeah.
So, well, students are always under time pressure, but it's a personal philosophy. I don't like it.
Well,
Yes,
anyway, thank you.
Victoria.
I have 3 questions. So when we're done, can you help me?
Go right ahead.
But it's about I set up a course for my online. I don't know because you're recording this, so is that privacy or I don't know, like are we?
Are there students in it?
I already have a few students done the work, so.
Okay, so it's a running course. Yeah, I'd rather not record that.
Okay.
I don't want student names.
But I do have one question that everyone can watch. I noticed that on your when you show us in your modules, some of your assignment have the question number. How do you put that on there? Like there were a couple of lessons. You have a quiz, for example. You have 5 questions. How do you put that on there?
No, the names of the questions don't appear to the students. So the one you noticed in one quiz, it was like question 4 and question 6, and they weren't in order and things like that. That's no problem. Those question names are just for you. So you can identify, you can search for questions in a question bank.
No, I mean, what I'm referring to is, when you look at your modules, let's say you look at whatever quiz that you have earlier, and you have the dates, and then you have the score, the total points, and then the last part is 5 questions. How do you put that in there?
When you're finished,
it's automatic.
post them.
Oh, it's automatic? Okay, cool.
When
It's
you're-
You do have to keep the mask in your correct, because like if I had, for instance, on my last quiz, I had 3 different question banks. So like there was one that had, one is the matching, and I had 5 questions, and all the students had to have, but it had to be matching, but it's 5 with 5. And then subtract 5 from 50 points, so that's 45 points. And then there was one where I had 8 different things, but I wanted the Canvas to select 4 out of those 8. So half the students would get half the questions, and no 2 students would ever get the same amount of questions.
Right, but the number of questions appears automatically under
Yeah,
the name.
when you're finished.
You don't have to do anything to make that
How
happen.
many you want to appear out of it. So if there's 8 questions, you want 4 out of there and to be worth 4 points. And then you have to make certain that the whole thing will add up. It'll automatically add it up to 50, but I accidentally had 52, and I said, where did I get this 52? And that was because I had to change the number of matching or something out of there. So like if you're having it shuffle, you have to make certain that all the points add up to the number of points you want.
He's asking about the number of questions.
She's just asking about the number of total questions in the
So
test.
that will appear when you finish writing your quiz.
Yeah.
But you can write more questions than you want, and then there'll be 50 that are only selected, and the computer does it for you. Is that what
Right, but the test, if once you've
That's good to
selected,
know too.
everybody will get the same number of questions, not necessarily the same questions, and that number is automatically reported to the students. There's a good question here as well. Victoria, I'd like to get questions about, general questions about Canvas dealt with first, but I will stay here, and once everybody else no longer has any questions, I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll look at your course, okay?
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
You bet. But there's a good question here from Professor Shaw. Is there a way to block the private chat for students in Zoom? And yes, there is. There's a setting in Zoom that you can
I like
use to prevent that. And let me just show you the Zoom settings in general, so you can, there's lots of questions that you might answer just by, or things you might find out about Zoom just by going through those questions or those Zoom settings. You can get to your Zoom account settings by going to zoom.us on the web. That's the Zoom corporate website. And this is true for your Confer Zoom accounts as well as for any free or paid Zoom accounts you might have privately. All Zoom accounts can be accessed through this website. It's zoom.us. When you first log in here, or when you first come in here, you'll be asked to sign in. And I'm getting some background noise. I'm going to go ahead and mute that just a sec. Okay. You can unmute, everybody's muted, but you can unmute yourselves at need. Now, you can sign in here on the Zoom website with the email address and the password associated with your Zoom account that you probably got from Confer Zoom from the State Chancellor's office. So you just log in here and you'll be taken to your account management screens for your Zoom account. And there's a settings link over here on the left side. There's a little menu here. One of the items in that menu is settings. And you can learn a lot about Zoom just by going through those settings. You have meeting and recording settings, both, but the meeting settings are the most of them. So you can set a lot of things about how your Zoom meetings behave here. And the one that Professor Shaw is asking about has to do with chat. Let me just search for it here. That's quicker. Here's the setting. Allow meeting participants to send a private one-to-one message to another participant. That's the private chatting. If you turn that off by just clicking on that button there, they won't be able to do that. Did that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You are certainly welcome. Sorry it took me a while.
That makes sense, but where did you go to find the chat? I don't see it on mine.
I had to scroll down. There's a lot of settings.
Yeah, I'm in the settings.
Yeah, and you want to be in meeting settings.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Thank you.
Which is the default. You just have to keep, what I did was I did Control F on my keyboard, and then I typed in chat, and that searches any web page for a particular word. So it's faster to find things that way.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, because I wanted, that's something I didn't know that I wanted to know.
Right. You didn't know that your students were talking about you behind your back.
That's the reason, yes.
She's already mentioned that to us.
You can stop them from doing that. Let's see. There's just lots of stuff in here. You can have an automatic end of meeting feedback survey presented to your attendees if you like, if you turn that on. I don't keep that on because it's kind of annoying, but you can do that. You can add polling. The polling is not turned on by default. You can add polling to your class, so you can ask questions and have the students answer them.
And Dave, I have another question it's not regarding the Zoom, but regarding the Proctorio.
Proctorio, okay.
Yeah.
I have limited contact with Proctorio, but I'll try. Go ahead.
So the thing is, do I need to first download in my computer and then I can use it and for my test?
You have to activate that feature.
I have to activate it.
And I'm trying to think who has access to that right now. I think Mesa does. I can pull up a Mesa. I can pull up a Mesa course here.
I'm going to say City does as well.
CT has it in the Canvas, the Proctorio now.
Yes, City does.
But,
Carlos Dalalama in his math course has it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know they're trying to make sure that access continues, but I think we're not going to have it for free for much longer. And that service is incredibly expensive.
Oh, okay.
It costs more than Canvas would cost us if we had to pay for Canvas. So I don't know how long it's going to be there. Just a warning. So let's see, I've got a Mesa course here somewhere. Let me find it. I have to pick a course that's in an account or a sub account that has access there to Proctorio. I think this one should. Then let's see. Yeah, nope, that's Portfolio. I think you have to go to settings and feature options.
That's a modem, right? No, but is our modem thing a router too? Or is it just use it as a router if you want to? So we just put the thing extra. Only the Wi-Fi is a separate.
There, that muted that. Where is it?
Dave, while you're doing that, before I forget, I think for the back to where we were doing the limiting the student to talk in the chat, I think that's also prevent us from chatting in privately with the students, isn't it?
No, that just it only applies to participants, not to the host. Okay. But it means the student would not be able to reply to you privately. You could send one to the student privately, but they wouldn't be able to reply privately.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't see it here. Oh, there it is. Never mind. Yeah, so you'd go to your settings in your course menu and go to the Apps tab at the top of the screen.
Okay.
If I can take out the Netgear and I call them and say I want to use your Wi-Fi, they turn on this.
Go to the Apps tab, and Proctorio, if your school has it, Proctorio will show up as an option. It'll be among the installed apps. You want to go and limit the number of apps that display by selecting only those that are installed on our system. If you go to not installed, there's a ton of them that you wouldn't have access to. So go to the installed tab and then select Proctorio and add the app to your course. And then, oh gosh, you have to have the key. Well, that's not convenient, which I don't have. So I'm not sure exactly how they're handling that.
So do we only the instructor have to do this one? Does the student have to also download
No,
the app?
only the instructors would have to do this. But keep in mind, the way Proctorio works, the student, to be effective, the student has to have a webcam and a microphone. And a lot of them aren't going to have that right now. You can use it without that, but it's much less effective. And I don't know how long it's going to be available. So.
We were told to the end of the year, Lisa.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I have not been involved in that, so I can't really tell you. I know they're trying to pay for it for everyone, but it's something we've gotten along without for a long time. Yes, Kathy.
Yeah, I had a question that you had once mentioned that we can sometimes control the computer of students, just like when we call technical support from behind.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Through
tried
Zoom.
doing that. Yes, through Zoom. And I tried doing it with the students, but I don't know, I must have gotten it backwards or something, because they had the option to control my screen, but I couldn't see where I controlled theirs. So
in order for you to control their screen,
because the student was having problems.
They have to be sharing their screen.
Okay.
So Kathy, why don't you let me stop my share so you can share your screen.
All right.
Oh no, wait a minute. Excuse me. I'm backwards there for a second. Let me share my screen with you.
Okay.
With everybody. Now, if you you see that little view options button at the top?
Yes.
Click on that, and there's an option in there to request remote control.
Okay.
All right, click that. And as you probably see on my screen, I've just gotten a message saying that you're asking me to give you control of my computer.
Okay.
If I click approve, it should tell you that you have remote control. And now you should be able to do something like, oh, I don't know, click the security button at the bottom of the screen and bring that up. I didn't do that. See, my hands, my fingers never left my hands. Kathy's controlling my computer as though she were sitting in front of it.
All right, just like I just muted you.
Yep. And yeah, so then
You're the instructor.
you could minimize this Zoom screen, and you could go and you could do anything on my computer while I watched.
Okay, but the thing is,
I can.
the instructor, can you control my screen? That's what I'm saying.
Only if you share your screen. Only the person who is sharing their screen can have their computer controlled.
Oh, okay. So that's why it looked like the students were controlling my screen.
Yeah, you were sharing your screen, so they had the option to ask you to let them control your screen. So you have to have them share their screen, and then you request control from them.
So ask the students. That make sense? Yes.
And you, at any time, if somebody's controlling your screen, you'll have a little note, a button to that effect, and you can turn that off at any time.
Okay, but I think the student is having trouble sharing.
The person whose computer is being controlled can take back control at any time. So it's not an intrusive thing, or not. You don't lose control by allowing someone to control your computer.
Okay, but I think the student was having trouble showing how to share for PowerPoint.
Exactly. It's a very useful thing to be able to do when a student is having trouble, say, saving a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. You can go in and you can do it for them and they watch. And then you can turn them loose and they can watch, they can try it again, and you can watch them do it and talk them through it and so on. Yeah, Zoom is actually quite a decent remote support tool on top of everything else. I've never seen a single application that does as much vis-a-vis distance education as Zoom does. Maybe Canvas, but Zoom's right up there. You can do so many things with it beyond just having a meeting.
All right, so the person who wants to be controlled must submit.
Must share their screen.
Share their screen first.
Yes. And that way no one could take over control of your screen without your cooperation.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. I always learn more. Like I said, sometimes I learn more from the after stuff.
Well, I agree. The questions are usually the best part of these sessions.
Yeah.
So
But
that's why I'm determined to let them play out and let you ask as many questions as you like.
That's why you're so awesome. We're all your groupies.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions about Canvas before I let Victoria share her screen and show me her course? I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off now. Hope everybody has a wonderful weekend and stay safe. Watch out. It's getting crazy out there.
Dave, do we have any other meeting, Zoom meeting on the Canvas or anything?
Oh, yeah, we got lots
Schedule?
more coming up. Lots more coming up. Let me, let's see, just a second. Let me show you. Mary Kingsley sends out this week and next week, every week. But we do have a master calendar that is a little bit fluid right now. We haven't, I'm trying to find it here. What did I do with that? I'm looking, just a second. There it is. And yes, I'm sharing my screen. It's a Google Calendar. Next week is on Monday from 2 to 4 is Introduction to Zoom. Okay. Starting from scratch with Zoom. On Wednesday from 2 to 4 is adding video to your Canvas course. The following week, the Tuesday the 23rd, doing grading in Canvas, where we'll look at the Gradebook and the Speedgrader and all that, and rubrics. And Friday the 26th, we're doing student groups, using student groups in your Canvas course. Group assignments, group discussions, things like that, group activities. And then the rest of June, there's one on the 29th, Monday, on humanizing your online course, putting yourself in there. Lots of different techniques for that, including video and other things. Actually, I haven't quite decided everything I'm going to put into that one yet. That's the first time I've done that one. I've got to make it up as I go along. I'll be ready by the 29th. And then I'm not. Right now, we don't have anything scheduled for the rest of that week because that's the July 4th holidays.
And the logging for all this Zoom is the same, right? The way
same
we
one.
did it today.
Always
okay,
the same
perfect.
one.
Okay.
That's a little bit of a risk. We could have someone break in and show us something we maybe never seen before or something like that. But actually, I've only been Zoom bombed once in all the hundreds of Zoom meetings I've done. But it's a little bit of a risk, but it's worth it because nobody is prevented from getting in because they don't have the link. So you can always use that link. I insist on using my personal meeting room every time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You are certainly welcome. It's a pleasure having you today.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else before I stop the recording?
So just really quick, the Zoom one that's on next Tuesday is the one that you've offered before?
Oh yeah, many times.
Okay.
It's starting, this is Zoom.
Right, okay.
We try to do that every now and then because some people come along who've never used it.
Right, okay.
But we will have, of course, questions at the end where you can ask anything you want. Right. But the price of admission is sitting through everything else that you've heard before. Right. Okay. You can always drop in toward the end, toward 4 o'clock.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Take care.
Maybe
Thank
not that
you.
late, but early on. Have a good weekend. Thank you for all of
You
your.
too. So much. Thanks so much
Thanks.
for coming.
Yeah.
All right, Victoria, I'm going to close. I'm going to stop the recording, and then I'll ask you to share your questions with me.